enslaved. The body, mind and spirit need to be simultaneously liberated. A great deal of the success of the programmers is that ministers have rejected the study of the mind, psychology, and therapists have rejected spiritual things. The victim is left without a way to heal both spirit and mind. Partial freedom is still slavery. And not only that, but both therapists and ministers seem to feel the actual physical threats to the slave's body to be outside of their jurisdiction, and by default it is left up to the victim to provide. Which again, without the body safe and healed, the mind and spirit are not fully free. There are therapists and others who pontificate about how evil Christian ministers are for trying to deliver mind-controlled slaves from their demonic possession. This is not the problem. The problem is that the Illuminati have skillfully separated the various therapeutic elements both functionally and legally. The answer to the enslavement of body, soul, mind and spirit is a team of people who will address all the issues together. Both the psychologists and ministers see the excesses of each other, but a little humility would go a long way, for both sides to recognize each other's value. God works through all people, even those who resist Him. That is why He can rightly be called Almighty God. C. The use of lies externally and internally, the use of covers and fronts, the art of hiding things in a system. External deceptions. There seems to be no end to the lies that are involved with the monarch programming. The old adage that nothing is as it appears, is generally the rule. However, once one catches on to the common tactics of deceptions, the tactics themselves become red flags which can alert a thinking person to what is hidden. This is similar to those Russians who could read between the lines when reading communist propaganda and figure out the truth. The deception begins with covering up the identity of the slave. Within the Illuminati, the art of hiding genealogies is a fine art. Children are swapped and placed with foster parents. Mothers all of a sudden have babies, when no one has noticed them being pregnant. Investigators like Fritz Springmeier, who have been investigating courthouse records and other primary documents, have seen courthouse records altered overnight, to cover up genealogical and financial information. Covers for individual slaves. The individual slave is usually given a good cover. A good cover will be one that cannot be seen through, and still allows the person the freedom to get their job done. When building a cover, the following questions will be asked: how much will this cover allow this person to spend? What kind of people can this person associate with? Where can this person go? And what kind of hobby can he or she have? By now, the Illuminati have their secret slaves in so many places that they have their bases covered in all fields. True life examples include a monarch programmer who appears to be simply a middle-class housewife. A monarch computer programmer who appears to be a deaf and dumb mute when in the presence of the public, but the deeper brilliant alters work secretly at programming computers during the day. An international spy, who is a programmed multiple, who has a totally different set of ID and wigs, so that when they switch to certain alters used for the intelligence agencies they not only act different, they look different, and have different valid ID. An apparently dumb blonde may be a very intelligent, highly trained monarch slave. Within the intelligence world, monarch slaves will function as agent provocateurs, which are people who join groups with the purpose of leading the group to do things that will cause it harm. The neo-Nazis are full of agent provocateurs, as are some of the patriot groups. Some monarch slaves are what is called clean agents, that is, they have never been used in intelligence work, so they have no record of use. Monarchs are great for being used by this or that group on a limited basis without anyone suspecting any connection. The intelligence term for the elaborate cover histories they give one of their monarch slaves to operate as an agent is called a legend. Supporting documents will be placed into the appropriate government files to support the legend. The intelligence agencies may have several intact legends for different personalities of a slave. The intelligence term is notional. It roughly means a fictional entity for the sake of an intelligence operation. Notional organizations are created to steal strength away from sincere organizations. If a church, or non-CIA KKK group etc. gets too sincere and powerful, a well-financed notional rival will start up, and then later fold under scandal. The net effect is to destroy the entire cause. At least half of the therapists helping monarch slaves in the author's area are programmed multiples themselves. The therapeutic community is heavily infiltrated. The helplines for women in crisis are all dirty. Some of the Christian groups that claim to help ZRA victims are really fronts. One recovering monarch slave tells about how her father was the mayor of an important city in Pennsylvania. He was part of the Illuminati and he introduced drugs into his area, and had a monopoly on illegal drugs in the area. As mayor he established the first drug hotline, so that people could inform authorities about drug trafficking. He staffed the drug hotline with his own people and this allowed him to get tips to eliminate his competition. The intelligence agencies which are using mind control are hiding their drug trafficking and criminal activities. One of the ways they do this is the so-called war on drugs. The situation is so bad and widespread that even the controlled media has had news where they reported CIA agents smuggling drugs seized in South America into the US, using government channels. When a slave is being programmed, the abusers will use schools, churches, big brothers, Boy Scouts and other activities to carry out the abuse and programming. Children pulled from classes will be given backup amnesia so that they forget that they forgot. In other words, they are totally unaware that they have lost time when they were pulled out of the classroom. The teacher gives them a test score, and they are told they took a test during the missing time. How can the front alters deny it, when they have been hypnotized to believe it and they can see the test scores? Altar boys and boys at Catholic orphanages have a record of being used by dirty priests. Recently, numerous priests have been discovered molesting children, and hundreds of lawsuits are underway, but it is still not coming out that this abuse is connected to trauma-based mind control. In the past, if the parents who were part of the Illuminati elite, but were not religious wanted their boy programmed, they could send him off to a military school run under the cooperation of the Catholic Church and units such as the 6th U.S. Army, which became one of the primary infiltrated units. The 6th Army uses the magical hexagram as its logo. This would provide the programmed child with a religious front. He could say, "I went to Catholic school." The programming could be disguised as discipline, etc. The establishment media have worked propaganda wonders for the abusers of the monarch mind control. Britain is extremely repressive in their information control. If any news medium tries to leak the most simplistic of information, a secret document called a notice will be sent at any time of day to them from a D-Notice committee, and the media will have to stop whatever reference is deemed a secret. In the US, it in effect works as tight, it just is not officially as tight. The abusers know that they also have an incredulous factor that can assist them. Who would believe that a sweet child drinks blood and is cannibalistic? The more that they can do that is far-fetched, the less credibility the child has if they do talk. Some children do try to talk. One monarch slave talked at age 5. And her entire family came down hard on her and blamed the child's talking for the death of one of the abusers. What kind of proof can a child bring that adults will accept? In the McMartin preschool case, about 800 children were witnesses whose stories corroborated the SRA and programming that was done, but the media and the judicial system were able to cover up the abuse and make it look on television that the abusers were the victims. It wasn't until after the case was over and the property sold, that the tangible proof, the secret tunnels with paraphernalia, were found, and then the news media has covered that up too. The abusers will often wear masks and costumes. Let's say a programmer wears a Mickey Mouse outfit, and the child would remember and tell, "Mickey Mouse hurt me." Now who is going to believe the child? The child has told the truth. but will be reprimanded for telling the truth. It doesn't take long for a severely abused child, who has been programmed to keep silent, to learn that no one wants to hear the truth anyway. The use of religious fronts. A great deal of monarch programming and slave abuse, as well as the drug trade, is done under three major covers or fronts: religious fronts, the front of national security and the military, and the entertainment fields, especially the country western industry, the rock music industry and Hollywood. The religious fronts were popular for centuries, especially when groups like the Jesuits, the Assassins, and other groups held immense power. Religious fronts are still being used, such as J.Z. Knight, Elizabeth Clare Prophet's Cut Church, the Church of Scientology, the Charismatic Movement, Jim Jones and Jonestown, and David Koresh's group etc. Billy Ray Moore's Lord's Chapel is entirely a mind control operation. There is a non-denomination Pentecostal church in southern Washington whose entire membership is Satanists under mind control. Various overseas missionary groups are covers for the CIA and mind control. It would take a book to explain how these religious fronts are part of the total trauma-based mind control and how they operate to protect mind control. However, there are publications which go into some of the CIA connections to these groups. It is suggested that interested persons read these publications. Some of the deceptions, such as the lone assassin idea, have been used for centuries as a cover for assassinations planned by the occult hierarchy. If we are going to really reveal how the monarch mind control is done, we will have to explain how the deception is done. If one describes a chameleon only by saying, "it is like a lizard," without mentioning the camouflage, then the most important part has been overlooked. Religious fronts are an important part of the Illuminati program for making slaves. In fact, due to their Gnostic philosophy of balancing their good deeds with their bad deeds, it is almost essential to have a religious front through which one can do good deeds. Even though adding this section to the book will spur some to blindly lash out at the book, still the whole story needs to come out. When we, the authors of this book, write that the monarch-type total mind control threatens everything this nation stands for, we are not exaggerating. The monarch mind control program has not been used just to program slaves, but it has been part of a much bigger deception. When this deception is realized by this nation, it will shatter the very fabric of trust that Americans have in their institutions. If Americans will begin to understand the power structure behind their institutions, and who controls this structure, they will begin to see the lies in the scripts that they have been fed since infancy. And you, the reader of this next section in this book, if you love the truth, can help begin the healing process to overcome some of the devastation that is going to rock this nation when the truth comes out. This next section will help both Christian and non-Christian reader. The therapist can learn about what is happening so that they can better deal with what the SRA survivors are beginning to reveal. The grooming of the American people to believe massive amounts of lies did work, until a few loving therapists, ministers, and doctors began to liberate victims of the monarch trauma-based mind control. These programmed multiples began revealing a horror story of deception unparalleled in history. For the reader to deal with the next section means courage. It means that the reader will have to muster up some of the same type of love of truth that the mind control survivors must muster to free themselves of the lies of their satanic programming. What we see and hear can be programming, in the same way SRA victims are deceived. Everyone in the Illuminati of any significance has participated in grooming the public to believe that Billy Graham is a great man of God. Graham has stood beside each of the presidents and the Pope. The Illuminati don't just program individuals. They program whole nations. The public has been led to believe in a television image. But what if the secular media's image of Billy Graham is not real? For Christians it means that they can quit trusting in a man, and place their trust fully on God. For secular readers, they can begin to see the extent of how America's institutions have been corrupted by the horrible trauma-based mind control. The heartbeat of the body of Christ is crying out that something is terribly wrong. We will address that. All of us, whether Christian or not, must step out of the lies and look clearly out into the darkness and see every facet of this evil mind control. When men who worship the God of this world place, "In God we trust," on the Federal Reserve Bank notes, we who know the truth must step out of our dream world and realize that they mean Lucifer. By the way, the Federal Reserve is not a government agency, but a private banking institution of the Illuminati. This has been documented in a number of writings. The issue at hand in this next section is to show how the institution called the Christian Church, and the world in general, has been deceived by a programmed multiple and this trauma-based mind control. Secular readers will be shown that the doctrines that Christians want to believe in have been subtly destroyed under the disguise of building them up. This is no different than the destruction of the positive values which hold any group together. After the repeated collaboration by essentially all the Christian churches worldwide in many activities as the NCC, the Billy Graham Crusades, the Promise Keepers and other programs, the Christian churches, Orthodox, Catholic, Protestant and non-denominational, can be considered one institution. The infiltration and control of the Christian religion has been one of the easiest tasks of the Illuminati. The Christian churches are what the intelligence agencies called soft targets. The deception of Billy Graham, a 1001 ND control front. In 1992, Billy Graham broadcast all over the U.S. His radio show called Embrace America 2000. In the Louisiana area, it came over the Pajama-Lafayette station. During the show, Billy Graham told the American people we need to embrace the New World Order. Billy Graham is also on record stating that people can have salvation through paganism, another name for witchcraft. For instance, in McCall magazine, January 1987, Graham stated, "I used to believe that pagans in far-off countries were going to hell. I no longer believe that. I believe that there are other ways of recognizing the existence of God through nature, for instance. Pagans believe that salvation can be obtained through nature." This is not a pleasant story. Billy Graham has been built up to be the most respected popular person in America. Who wants to find out they have been deceived? We will try to give you the facts, or evidence, and may God grant you wisdom as you read this. This section is not propaganda for our own personal views. Years ago, when Fritz set out on his search, he had no final outcome in mind. Fritz isn't concerned with concealing facts one way or the other. There is no desire to stampede our readers anywhere. We do want to clarify many issues. We do want to help the truth seeker. But the co-authors personally have no battle to win, except that truth be brought forth. The issues at stake are not trivial. Historically, Billy Graham's deception is one of the greatest deceptions that has ever been perpetrated. Some might argue the greatest, making Benedict Arnold, Quisling, and the Trojan horse pale into insignificance. Allow us to introduce you just briefly into the world of the Illuminati. All top hierarchy Satanists are required to have covers. The Illuminatus will have multiple personalities, and he or she will have one personality that is particularly shown to the outside world. They, the programmers, handlers and the Illuminati councils, try to get the best covers that they can. They like to be clergymen, but they are also mayors of big cities, lawyers, doctors, etc. A Christian psychiatrist who has worked with numerous victims of Satanism and multiple personality disorder wrote this observation after having worked with a large number of multi-generational programmed satanic multiples. Some Satanists have invaded the church as it is the perfect cover for them. They masquerade as angels of light and gravitate towards positions of leadership in order to have more influence. Because much of what they say is sound doctrinally, they are rarely detected. Most survivors whom I have worked with had Satanist parents who were in high positions in churches. Many were pastors. Dr. Fox, Lauder. The Spiritual and Clinical Dimensions of Multiple Personality Disorder. Salida, Co., Books of Sangre de Cristo, p. 196. Let us repeat what Dr. Lord Fox said. Most survivors whom I have worked with had Satanist parents who were in high positions in churches. Many were pastors. She didn't say some, she said most. Independently, we have discovered the very same thing. People don't grasp that just because a preacher can sincerely preach what seems a perfect sermon, doesn't mean that he can't also be part of the satanic hierarchy. What is happening with the Illuminati's ability to create programmed multiples is that we are getting perfect preachers who are secret hierarchy members. Some of their perfect sermons are full of slides, such as, the Christian people need to get involved in the voting process. Christians love to hear such things, it tickles their ears, but the truth is that the entire voting process has been captured and corrupted. Voting machines have repeatedly been exposed to have been rigged, and the controlled media and public denial have prevented Americans from giving up their myth that the common man's votes run this nation. The subject of election corruption is dealt with in Fritz's newsletters, etc. in Fritz's Be Wise as Serpents book, which exposed Billy Graham as a Luciferian in 1991. It is explained that high-level Satanism is Gnosticism, which requires that the force of these great satanic magicians be balanced. In other words, in high-level Satanism your good deeds must balance your evil deeds. People do not realize that unless someone does good deeds they cannot be a high-level Satanist. That is why some of the greatest philanthropists are also our leading national Satanists. To see Billy Graham do something commendable does not disqualify him from Satanism. In fact, it is a requirement if he's been part of the Illuminati, such as ex-insiders/witnesses say he was. In fact, it wasn't until working on this book that an eyewitness to the mind control abuse at the hands of Billy Graham offered to help contribute to this section of the book. In other words, an eyewitness helped write this. This eyewitness account by the co-author matches what the list of eyewitnesses that Fritz assembled in 1993 have said. But the eyewitness went further and exposed B.G. Crusade's skillful use of monarch slaves to launder drug money. Several police officers have stated that today, there is for all practical purposes no police training helping police to understand Satanism. They are highly trained in many areas, but Satanism is avoided. When an SRA case involving multiplicity in Olympia war recently happened, the police who investigated the case found that they were treated as international experts in Satanism by other policemen. They themselves knew that they knew very little. Where are the experts to teach us about how the Illuminati functions? Where are the experts who know who are in the Illuminati? There is no college open to the public that teaches advanced Illuminati studies 401, and gives degrees in Satanism. The expert witnesses are those who have managed to leave the Illuminati and Satanism, and stay alive long enough to talk. But the other side will argue, how can we verify the testimony of your witnesses, Fritz? Remember what happened to over 100 people who had some type of knowledge about the Kennedy assassination? Jim Mears in his book Crossfire on the Kennedy assassination lists 103 people who were key figures in knowing about the assassination who have died, many in circumstances that indicate assassination. The story we are dealing with here is just as sensitive to the elite as Kennedy's assassination, because it involves their preparations for the creation of a false Christ, called by Christians the Antichrist, who will be the master handler/programmer. The list of known and credible witnesses. If the authors were to call my list of witnesses up to the witness stand, which I can't, for it would be a death sentence to many of them, the list would include 1 Council of Foreign Relations member, who is secretly against the New World Order. 1 National Security Agency person, who is against the New World Order. 1 CIA high-level administrator. 2 Satanists, still in governs, but unhappy enough with the situation to talk. 4 ex-Satanists, 3 of which are eyewitnesses, all Christians. Now 2 ex-New Age leaders who worked with the conspiracy, both became Christians. 1 ex-33-degree Mason, now a Christian. Various Christians who have worked with Billy Graham, pastors, etc. Various therapists working with SRA victims. The man who ran security at the Sacramento Crusade, Alice Bramer, a woman who worked as a secretary for John Dixon. None, except for a couple of exceptions, none of these people knew anything about what the other witnesses, sources, had said. The high degree of validation and collaboration that separate testimony by witnesses who have never seen each other and live in different parts of the country is very powerful. There are several questions that pop up into people's minds who are not familiar with who Fritz is, and are not familiar with these witnesses. The type of worries some readers could be naturally having might be, but how are we, the readers, to know how accurate these people are? Are they trustworthy? Do they have a reputation for honesty? Could they possibly be giving false information to discredit a great man of God? These kind of questions can be natural questions for people unfamiliar with how this information was obtained. But we assure you, that what we pass on from these eyewitnesses can be relied upon. None of these worries have any substance to them, because the manner in which Fritz came to find out about Billy Graham has generally been while he was researching other things related to the Illuminati. The author has not been out to build a case, the case has built itself from numerous detached witnesses who have nothing to gain by telling what they know. These witnesses have not come to Fritz to feed him bogus information. Just the paper trail on Billy Graham is very revealing in itself. Generally the information of these witnesses has been confided by these witnesses to their trusted friends. Initially, these witnesses have had no idea that the information they confided in their trusted close associates would go beyond their most trusted friends. These trusted friends then have had permission to let me contact them or find out their information. The reason why these people are believable is that the information they reveal could get them killed, and second, the manner and circumstances of how the information has originally unfolded has never been in any fashion or method that could be construed as an attempt to give false information. Clarifying what is looked for in proof. Too many people are considered guilty unless proven innocent, which means that a legitimate search for truth has not taken place. On the flip side, we must bear in mind that hidden information that has laid dormant for years may totally reverse our understanding of something. Exceptional circumstances may surprise us. If some item does not lend itself to totally irrefutable, totally unqualified claims, then knowing this, the proper investigator uses words like, almost certainly, and, most likely. If the investigator feels strongly that everything is totally clear, he may declare that something is correct, without qualification. This is the nature of proof. We need to understand the qualifications and reservations that often are attached to evidence or conclusions. But we certainly do want to press our investigations as far as possible to get as many unqualified conclusions as possible. Of course, by the time we write this, we have already done our investigating, and have one conclusion without any qualification: Billy Graham is working for the satanic hierarchy. We want to try to introduce the material in such a way that you will get some sense of the search, so that you will not simply accept our conclusion but will make rational spirit-led critically thought-out decisions about Billy Graham. So for the sake of the reader's investigation, please, let us unshackle ourselves from our prejudices and preconceived labels. Let us suspend our judgment about Billy Graham one way or the other, until we have thoroughly studied, prayed and gained discernment about this. It might be interesting to get some of the Masons, who casually without realizing what they were saying, have talked about Billy Graham's membership, or other aspects of his Masonic involvement. It's doubtful that such men would be of any value on the witness stand. Their numerous Masonic oaths to lie and conceal Freemasonry under penalties of gruesome death would tend to have more influence on them than swearing on a Bible. See Duncan's Masonic Ritual Book, p. 30 for the first-degree oath. This type of witness, because they talked accidentally and casually, are very valuable witnesses to whoever accidentally hears them, but unfortunately they must be assumed to be still loyal to the Masonic Lodge and would be hostile witnesses that will not cooperate. If this were an actual court of law, depositions of Billy Graham's staff could be taken, so that it could be revealed to the court how many times they have lied. By showing their lies, their testimony would be impeached and Christians would realize that Billy Graham's staff have played a major role in the deception. This article will put forth evidence that impeaches the testimony of Billy Graham's staff. We must refer readers to the Be Wise as Serpents book and other writings of Fritz for more information. Also some other books will be named too. Because these leaders are corrupt, they have been participating in the mass deception of the world about what Billy Graham does and who he is. In fact, if this were a court of law, all types of people could be subpoenaed to take depositions, and we might find out many more things than we already know. The motivation of the co-authors. Many people, who like Billy Graham, have imputed evil motives to anyone exposing Billy Graham. As the scriptures say at one point, "Am I to become your enemy because I tell you the truth?" The story about Billy Graham and his lifelong career for the Illuminati is not an easy thing for us to write. We do not enjoy speaking negative things against people. We do enjoy speaking positive things about people. And yet no man, no servant of God is above reproach. We can personally have an inner peace that what we have done was what we should have done. Something needs to be done to wake mankind up before it's too late. Clarifying what is acceptable testimony. In some subjects, going to the encyclopedia or almanac will settle questions. In dealing with the Illuminati and high levels of the occult world, unless the investigator is willing to listen to eyewitness testimony, he or she will get nowhere. There is rarely any written record of their secret activities. But how much stock can be put in eyewitnesses? Many people up to now have criticized Fritz for using eyewitnesses. But remember that if we did manage to get some paper trail or books on the subject, that book paper trail would not be acceptable in court, or even if allowed would not be as important as our eyewitnesses. In court, the written records can be introduced along with the person who recorded them. In other words, the personal witness is still important even with written documents. The testimony of our eyewitnesses expose Billy Graham's mind control activities. Still, we want to bear in mind that witnesses have varying degrees of credibility and knowledge. The qualifications of witness in relation to what they are testifying is important. But to simply dismiss all these witnesses because they are not paper is simply to cut ourselves off from many valuable sources of information. In accumulating evidence, the researcher will come upon two types of information. One is prearranged evidence and the other is called casual evidence. Casual evidence is evidence that has just happened to appear by accident. An actual example is when friends of mine met a total stranger who happens to be a Mason and he offhandedly talks about Billy Graham being a Freemason. Casual evidence is simply evidence that happens without the interested party having anything to do with its surfacing. Finding casual evidence is generally luck. In this case, Fritz has bumped into a great deal of casual evidence, simply because he had his eyes open and has been investigating this area for several years. Because of the situation today in this nation, there is little chance to get a proper hearing of this information. In terms of the future, indeed, the backlash from this book may silence us. The truth will still remain, even if we and the other witnesses don't. We can draw conclusions about ducks from studying various types of ducks. I cannot draw conclusions about radios from studying ducks. I can generalize about American-made cars, but I can't include in my generalization about American cars an ox cart in India. This may sound basic, and it is, yet people try to generalize by lumping the generational Satanists in with everybody else, and it just doesn't work. They also try to draw conclusions about the Freemasons on the basis of what the Rotary Club they belong to is like, and it just doesn't work. In terms of trying to get a proper hearing today, one of the barriers is that people use their own experiences to draw conclusions. People have nothing in their experience to allow them to draw conclusions about the Illuminati programmers/handlers who are moral degenerates and programmed multiples, who will do anything, in spite of their nice fronts. The policies of deception by the Billy Graham Crusade staff. In 1992, a Christian named Richard Bennett, a friend of Fritz's, confronted the Billy Graham Crusade staff. What he was concerned about was the Billy Graham Crusade policy, that has been in place since the 50s, of sending Catholics that come forward back to Catholic churches. Documentation shows that the deception is worse than that. New believers that have never gone to any church are sometimes referred by the Billy Graham counselors to the Catholic Church. Now, why would Richard and Fritz be concerned about the Catholic Church? Richard Bennett was a priest from Ireland who worked at the Vatican before giving his life to Christ. He knows how the Catholic hierarchy prevents people from realizing what they have in Christ. For those who have read Fritz's Be Wise as Serpents book chapter 2.2, you know that Fritz is very concerned when anyone gives their allegiance to a power structure that is part of the know and part of its monarch drama-based total mind control. Not everything about the Catholic Church is wrong. Yet, the Billy Graham Crusade could never get the support it gets from conservative Christians if Billy Graham's staff didn't lie about where Crusade converts are sent. What Richard and Fritz were concerned about was that new Christians would be sent to Catholic churches, which now are teaching Zen Buddhism, New Age things, not the salvation by grace that these new Christians need. Granted, the enthusiasm of these new Christians might infuse some life into the Catholic Church, but a babe in Christ is defenseless. He needs nurture, and the chance to grow. It isn't meant for new Christians to be thrown to the wolves. Anyway, last spring and summer, the Billy Graham Crusade Executive Committee was confronted face to face with the evidence of what the Billy Graham Crusade in September '93 was going to do. Actually, more people than Richard did confront them, but Richard is one of the most knowledgeable ministries to the Catholics in this area. What the Billy Graham Crusade Executive Committee told Richard Bennett was that he had nothing to worry about. That the Crusade would never send anyone to a Catholic church, but that if new converts wanted to go there on their own, that was their own choice. 4 Catholic leaders sat on the Executive Committee for the '92 Portland Crusade: Chancellor Mary Jo Telly, a deacon and 2 priests. On the Catholic radio station, and we have it recorded, Mary Jo Telly of the Billy Graham Executive Committee along with another Bishop Waldschmidt told the Catholic listeners not to worry, that if they came forward they would be guaranteed that they would be referred back to a Catholic church. They gave the assurance 4 times in that talk show. They said that the decision to send people who came forward to Catholic churches was firm because it had come right from the very top. This was 6p.mkvdm Portland station. Our recording of this is a record of just one of thousands of lies that the Billy Graham Crusade people have told Christians over the years. In fact, from the evidence it appears the Billy Graham Crusade people say whatever they have to, regardless of the truth. In the North Star Baptist, November 1964, there was an article by Japheth Perez, who is a convert in the New York 1957 Billy Graham Crusade and a brand new Christian, was sent to a Catholic church by the Billy Graham Crusade. Ian Paisley wrote this comment about Billy Graham's staff. Dr. Graham did not reply. He never does reply to letters like this. He states he never defends himself. He does have a staff, however, who are paid to defend him and who are never hampered by facts or bothered by ethics or logic in carrying out their duties. One of the group, George L. Edstrom, replied. The Jesuits themselves could not give a finer example of casuistry than his. It is thoroughly dishonest and deceitful. However, since this technique of deceit by misdirection, this failure to face up to the issues, this disregard of fact, and this blasphemous attempt to identify Dr. Graham's official connection with infidels and his flattery and endorsement of them with our Lord's ministry to publicans and sinners is so typical of the Graham organization. In Fritz's June '93 newsletter from a Christian ministry, a letter from Graham's staff was reproduced with a point-by-point exposure of its lies. Christians are really not well aware of what the Billy Graham crusade does. We quote a paragraph from a letter sent to Billy Graham clear back in the 1950s by a pastor who, grieved by what Billy Graham was doing to the harvest field, said, "Some people say that if you have just one convert in an evangelistic campaign, it is worth the meeting. That is not true. The evangelist, as the pastor and teacher, is given to the body of Christ. The real test of an evangelistic campaign is not how many people are converted but what kind of a spiritual condition does it leave in a community." Billy Graham is not only failing in the number of people he leads to the Lord Jesus Christ in this day when hearts are hungry and most people are afraid of what may happen in the world and when it is easier to get people converted than it ever has been in my lifetime, but Billy Graham is pulling the limbs off of the evangelistic trees and the orchard is being left in bad condition. As we have often said, the real test of an evangelist is not just how many converts he has but does he leave the orchard in condition so it will keep bearing fruit. Billy Graham's active role in satanic ritual abuse. Before we get into the details, we'll take an overview. Satanists thrive on power. Satan loves to give his followers power. Satan took Christ to the mountaintop and told Christ that he'd have a crusade and bring everyone to follow Christ, if Christ would just bow down and worship him. Christ refused. Billy Graham accepted it. We know a great deal how the Satanists took Billy Graham, the brush salesman, and made him into the famous evangelist that he has become. Additionally, we also know from victims of Satanism, that have come out of it, that Billy Graham has been a Satanist himself. How can this be? And how can we know this? One of the best witnesses is a Monarch program survivor, who has escaped from being a high-level Pentagon slave. This survivor witnessed Billy Graham working for the Illuminati. This survivor also carried messages for the satanic hierarchy and personally knows that Billy Graham has been carrying messages from the top-secret Illuminati to presidents and heads of state. This person's information has been backed up by independent witnesses. A second ex-Satanist also remembers Billy Graham as a Satanist. Still another person, an ex-Illuminati person, who has MPD stood in front of Billy Graham and watched his eyes. This person said that it was very clear that Billy Graham has MPD and that he switches personalities. By happen chance or God's will, Fritz received a report from one of the women who went to church with Billy Graham's wife Ruth. The woman was told by Ruth in conversation that her husband Billy Graham is strange in that he always sleeps with his eyes open. It is characteristic of people who have MPD to sleep with their eyes open. People who have MPD may have a devout Christian personality and a devout satanic personality all within a single body. This is not uncommon. In Billy Graham's case, he is fully aware of what he is doing for the enemy in all his personalities, although his Christian personality may not be ecstatic about it all. Billy Graham's Decision magazine has on its front page caption is, "Changed from the inside out," and displays an infinity loop on the cover. Many monarch slaves have had lots of programming around the infinity loop. This is an important trigger to remind them how they are captured by the unending repeating rebuilding programming. There are countless little things like this, which are evidence that Billy Graham is playing a role in the satanic mind control of the Illuminati. Dr. Flynn, a mind control expert, told me that he saw internal documents from the 1950s teaching Billy Graham's people on how to have a successful revival. These documents instructed crusade counselors on things which were elements of mind control, such as delaying people from coming forward to confess Christ until the right time. If you've ever wondered how much Billy Graham knows if the Illuminati haven't told him, a concerned Christian named David Hill, who was an ex-mafia/ex-New Ager/ex-Mason did. The concerned Christian was a friend of Franklin Graham, Billy's son, and he had lived for 2 years at Billy Graham's house. He didn't realize that Graham had been sucked into the New World Order until he had confronted Billy Graham. David Hill, who was an ex-Mason turned Christian, who had worked with many of the world's elite, spent 18 hours in a hotel room warning Billy Graham about the New World Order. Billy Graham told David Hill at the end of their 2 days of talking in this eastern U.S. hotel room that he was a captive of that organization. In other words, after placing himself under the Illuminati's sponsorship in the late 40s, Billy Graham has had the choice of continuing to do his job for them, or being destroyed. Since they created who he is, they can destroy him. And he knows it. David Hill went on to try to expose the New World Order and was murdered, his life just as he finished a manuscript exposing it. Even a well-informed Christian like David Hill, who tried to warn Billy Graham about the was unaware of the extent of the deception of the Illuminati's mind control. David didn't know about programmed multiples. David Hill, who was a high-ranking Scottish Rite Freemason and an important mafia figure before he came to Christ, had even been the go-between for Billy Graham and Joe Banana, a mafia kingpin. It was David Hill, who, innocently believing in Billy Graham, arranged the meeting for the two men. David Hill knew that William Randolph Hearst was part of the Illuminati. He was part of the branch Illuminati, at what could be termed the sixth degree. William Randolph Hearst was totally into paganism. That is very obvious by a tour of his mansion in California, which has been turned into a museum. It was William Randolph Hearst who financed the first 3 years of Billy Graham's crusades. Stupak is associated with the Stewart Title Company. Stupak provides funds for Billy Graham and others. The head of Stupak is friends with Billy Graham and George Bush. The company has a lot of relatives running it. The Morris family is also tied to it. The people of Stewart Title Company are ruthless. The Van Den Illuminati family in California also helped Billy Graham's ministry get started. One of the ways the Illuminati funneled money to Billy Graham was through a monthly check delivered to John Dixon's office, which was picked up every month by Billy Graham's staff. After Dixon's secretary came to Christ, she tried to expose Billy Graham's connection to John Dixon. John Dixon sells crystal balls with snakes. She is part of the Illuminati. Billy Graham wrote her a letter calling her a woman of God. Dixon's secretary had a copy of this letter with Billy Graham's signature on it, after she became a Christian. In 1952, in Paris, Billy Graham and another evangelist had dinner with 2 prostitutes and each one took one of them home. Billy Graham had a wife and children at home, so the whole affair was totally improper for an evangelist, even if Billy Graham didn't have sex with the woman. He told his friend only that the prostitute had taken off her clothes and he'd gotten scared and come back to their hotel room. See Frady, Marshall. Billy Graham, A Parable of American Righteousness. Boston, Little, Brown and Company p. 169-170. In 1954, the man who ran security for the Sacramento Crusade saw a high-priced hooker sneak into Billy Graham's room prior to him going out for the crusade. Billy Graham and this high-priced hooker were alone together in the room. It is this type of thing that has opened Billy Graham up to blackmail. Should Graham ever try to stray from the proper course set for him by the Illuminati, they have plenty of ammunition to blackmail him. You may ask, why would the Satanists from generational satanic families want to intimidate Billy Graham with fear? Why, isn't he from a generational satanic family? The answer is that the whole satanic system operates off of fear. Intimidation and fear are standard everyday parts of their makeup and actions. Sort of the counterpart to the saying there is no honor among thieves. The satanic hierarchy are in constant intimidation and power struggles. When Billy Graham wanted to, he could call up Henry Kissinger and say, "Tell him to call me the minute he comes in." Frady, p. 451. Henry Kissinger is right in the middle of what the Illuminati is doing. Another illuminatus that Graham had a working relationship with is Henry Luce, friend of the Baryukes. Luce and Billy Graham spent several nights staying up talking late into the night. Knowing how the Illuminati work, it is very safe to assume that they have pushed Billy Graham into further degenerate acts. They have probably done everything they can to pervert Billy Graham, so there is no telling what sexual sins remain hidden. Kissinger is a member of P2 Freemasonry. If we were to assume that Billy Graham were not involved, and that is a big if since we know that he is, then if one studies P2 Masonic recruiting tactics given in the book In God's Name, p. 116, then the reader will grasp that anyone of Billy Graham's stature who associates so freely with P2 Freemasons will be targeted and blackmailed and forced to join. Once they join, new members are forced to compromise other possible targets. Billy Graham is part of the people who implement the Monarch program, which was a joint Illuminati/CIA total mind control program done to people. We know that he is serviced by Monarch sexual slaves, their kitten alters. It is very easy for the network to keep these poor victims, Monarch slaves, from talking, and so the full extent of much of what has gone on may not come out in our lifetimes. Another possible clue about Billy Graham's hidden life comes from Billy Graham himself. Do the readers remember how Jimmy Swaggart would disguise himself with sunglasses, etc., and his staff helped him carry out what he in part confessed? In Hollywood, yes, Billy Graham said that he often attends loves and rock festivals incognito by putting on a false mustache and beard. He also said he found the experience in doing that kind of thing refreshing. This story was in the Chicago Daily News, December 29, 1969. The article's purpose appears to have been to make Billy Graham look hip to today's rock and roll crowds of teenagers. Billy Graham described his friendship with Allen Dulles. I make every effort not to let it appear that I favor one party over another. I count Secretary Dulles a friend, but Senator Humphrey is also a good friend of mine, who he met when we were both swimming nude at the YMCA pool in Minneapolis where he was running for mayor. A friendship with Allen Dulles? Allen Dulles, director of the CIA, was one of the biggest perpetrators of the trauma-based mind control that this book is about. Humphrey also received orders from the satanic hierarchy. And what is this swimming in nude? When Billy Graham had his 1954 crusade, large sums of the money came directly from people in the Illuminati, the Whitneys, the Vandants, the Rockefellers, and Chase Manhattan. Billy Graham has numerous times attended Hollywood cocktail parties. Just two examples of which are, one given by Debbie Reynolds, and another one which was a cocktail party for Hollywood stars put on by Nixon at his San Clemente car home on a Sunday evening. Billy Graham's schedule is filled with activities such as playing golf with people who are in the Illuminati, or are Hollywood types. The full impact of this constant fellowshipping with darkness is hard for people to grasp, because they picture that Graham is an evangelist and so therefore he must go where the sinners are. There is an expression, show me a man's friends and I'll tell you about him. It's one thing to spend time with evil to give it a chance to repent and come to the light. It is another to fellowship with evil and allow it to remain in darkness. Let us quote from a neutral source, a group who had been investigating the role of church and state. They were trying to determine for their study whether Billy Graham has had an impact on all the presidents from Eisenhower to Clinton. This study was not pro or anti-Graham, it was simply trying to determine what impact this religious leader is having on political leaders. Billy Graham has spent a lot of time with all the presidents, so their question was, has Billy Graham had some type of impact? Their conclusion printed in the Journal of Church and State concludes. Could Graham speak the word of truth, especially when that word may be critical or slashing, to the man in the White House when he is on such friendly terms with him? On the basis of the evidence now available, The answer must be no. What a person does on his free time is said to be revealing. Christ did spend his time with sinners, but he called them to repentance. In all my study of Billy Graham, I haven't seen any of the Hollywood movie stars or politicians change their lifestyles by their association with Billy Graham. A number of conversions have been artificially created, and given widespread publicity by the press. Pat Boone is the type of close friend of Billy Graham that perhaps typifies Billy Graham. He is someone well received by the public. Billy Graham has enjoyed using him in crusades. Pat Boone continued playing in Playboy-type nightclubs while he was singing at Billy Graham crusades. Pat Boone, who is pro-Jewish, may be Jewish, because the State of Israel has given him some special positions. There is nothing wrong with having Jewish blood, it just explains some of his connections. The New Gun Hand Bank was a CIA operation that laundered money, and did many illegal activities. Pat Boone was part of the New Gun Hand Bank scandal. Exactly how deep he was involved with the CIA's dirty dealing is unclear. Pat Boone's daughter Debbie Boone made a hit out of the song, "You Light Up My Life." The words of the song were written by a woman who worshipped Lucifer and wrote the song to Lucifer. Billy Graham has placed the emphasis in his crusades on putting liberals, even Catholic priests, up on the platform with himself. When does Billy Graham ever spend time with solid devout Christians? Every time Billy Graham went to Moscow he tried to avoid the devout Christians of the unregistered churches who unwittingly tried unsuccessfully to meet with Graham. Instead, he would meet with the heads of the Orthodox Church, which, since all the changes in Russia, are now proven to have been KGB agents, although most of us had suspected that all along from the type of things they said and did. How naive can Christians get? Do they really think that the Illuminati is going to let a legitimately powerful anointed Christian evangelist have regular access to their people? Don't Christians realize that if he was a real threat, someone who might really bring one of the top elite to Christ, that they would be assassinating him, not wining and dining him? Beware of false prophets, which come to you in sheep clothing, but inwardly they are ravening wolves. Mount 7:15, Behold, I am sending you forth as lambs among wolves. LK 10:3. The Apostle Paul warned Christian leaders, "Take heed therefore unto yourselves, and to all the flock, over the which the Holy Spirit hath made you overseers, to feed the church of God, which he hath purchased with his own blood. For I know this, that after my departing shall grievous wolves enter in among you, not sparing the flock." Acts 20:28-29. Bill Clinton, some senators, and Billy Graham's son Ned E. Graham invited the leaders of the Chinese house churches to a prayer breakfast in Washington, D.C. 3 delegates from the Three Self-Patriotic Movement, TSPM, and 3 others from house churches were invited: Lin Zhengao, Li Tian, and Yuan Zhangchen. Reverend Ned Graham visited these Chinese in person to extend the U.S. government's invitation. Graham told the Chinese Christians that the government would pick up the entire tab for the breakfast. In return, the U.S. government wanted the Christians to promise not to speak to the American press or to any Americans' comments that might hurt the image of the Red Chinese government. The Chinese government had promised the American government that they would guarantee safe entry and departure for these house church Christian leaders. Then after the meeting, they were invited to Billy Graham's house. The Chinese Christians declined the invitation by Graham. Chinese Pastor Lin said, "If I went to the United States, I would tell the truth, not lies. To tell the truth would definitely be considered an act of damaging the image of the Chinese government, which would create a pretext for the government to refuse my re-entry into China. But my commission from God is to serve him faithfully in China only. Therefore, I choose to remain in China rather than to go abroad." Ned Graham, Billy's son, tried to talk the Chinese into coming. "I know that you surely do love your enemies, why then can you not compromise?" The pastor answered, "Yes, We can forgive our enemies for persecuting or opposing us in their ignorance, but we can never love the false prophets or their heresy. Ned also said, "It is a glorious and dignified thing to be invited by President Clinton. Many people seek it, but cannot obtain it. Fortunately, the Chinese did not buy it." This info and quote comes from China: The Untold Story by the Voice of the Martyrs, Incorporated, 1995. pp. 25-31. Building an image. There is another area of Billy Graham that we will only touch on. In one of Fritz's 92 newsletter, Billy Graham is quoted stating that he thought UFOs were angels of God. On either January 28 or 29, see Springmeier, February 93, p.3, Billy Graham was interviewed on television by David Frost. Billy Graham said he believed people in heaven are sent by God to other worlds to help them in redemption of life. This is edging somewhat close to what the Mormons believe, that Christians, that is Mormons, will each receive their own planet to be God of. In another show, Graham said he wanted to evangelize other planets. Fritz has repeatedly tried to warn Christians of the many demonic dangers associated with the entire UFO phenomena, and the satanic hierarchy's connection to UFOs. Billy Graham's idea that UFOs are good angels is a dangerous idea. Billy Graham was given the contrived artificial image of being a great anti-Satanist. At the Chicago Crusade, 200 Satanists stood up in the crowds. Mayor Daley of Chicago then said from the stand, "Billy, we have 200 Satanists that want to disrupt your meeting. Shall I arrest them? What shall I do?" And Billy said, "No, let's sing a song." The crowd sang a song and the Satanists left the stadium on their own. The whole affair was clearly staged and hokey, but Christians are very naive about Satanism and Billy Graham. This further confirmed to them that Billy Graham was a great anointed man of God. First, hardcore Satanists don't show their faces in public. Second, the mayor of Chicago is not against the Satanists, he works with them, and there are reasons to suspect he is one. Third, Satanists, that do show themselves in public like Anton LaVey, want good publicity and would not carry out something like pretending to want to disrupt a Billy Graham crusade. Fourth, if a real threat had existed, Mayor Daley and the police wouldn't be asking Billy Graham what to do, they would be taking care of the problem. The police don't need to ask for permission to take care of troublemakers at the crusade. Christians accepted this episode at its face value. Those who did clearly show the common churchgoers' poor understanding of those who seek to control and destroy the church. How Billy Graham plays a key role in reprogramming monarch slaves. Two different talkative Satanists told sources of mine about two different coven meetings here in Portland in the summer of 1993 where the covens discussed the benefits that the Satanists were going to get from the Billy Graham crusade. I know one of the benefits for the Satanists was that monarch programmees who had become Christians and had deactivated the effect of their mind control programming were to be reprogrammed with Billy Graham's help. When Billy Graham arrived in town, someone on his crusade staff had managed to find and send out invitations to many of the survivors of satanic ritual abuse, SRA, in Portland to come to a special meeting to personally meet with Billy Graham. At this special meeting with SRA victims, Billy Graham personally began saying the buzzwords to reactivate these people's programming, especially the monarch survivors. This comes from several witnesses. For a number of years now, the Billy Graham crusade has been putting messages across the bottom of television screens that has activation codes for monarch survivors. Those monarch survivors who have become devout Christians to escape the nightmare of the monarch mind control are often not aware of the danger of watching the Billy Graham crusade on television. When people are activated, special people are in the area and they take the monarch survivors to what are called near-death trauma centers. These centers are used then to reprogram these poor people. There were 5 in this area, of which we located 2 and forced them to move their sites. Religious fronts, denominations, individual churches and certain ministers, are used to hide criminal activity. Billy Graham, who is a programmed multiple himself, is exceptionally adept at managing his monarch kittens. The drug money laundered through his crusades is carefully handled by many monarch slaves working in shifts and teams, so that the whole scheme cannot be uncovered by catching one person. Billy Graham runs big operations all over the world under the disguise of evangelism. Another of the countless religious covers that works with the networks/Illuminati's drug activities involves the Mormon bishop warehouses, which are used to store cocaine. Monarch slaves are involved with this. Different religious labels hide the same criminal network. By the way, when giving the patriarchal blessing, the Mormon patriarch, if he has a monarch slave, will use hypnosis and triggers to convince the person what their future will be like. One can't say this is happening in every case, but it is very widespread for the patriarch to give these blessings to be part of the trauma-based mind control operations. Billy Graham also personally delivers messages to the presidents for the Illuminati, such as when he arrived just prior to Bush's decision to launch Desert Storm. Sometimes the papers even spell out that Billy Graham serves as a message boy. For instance, when he delivered a message in April '92 from the Pope to North Korea's dictator Kim. References. The following 3 books were very helpful to me in terms of documenting Billy Graham's activities. All 3 authors were interested in documenting what Billy Graham is really all about. It may sound strange that I say that, but sadly most of the books that touch on Billy Graham, like America's Hour of Decision, including a life story of Billy Graham, are simply part of the deception process of the enemy. However, if anyone wants to know more about Billy Graham, the following 3 books were very helpful for me to document Billy Graham's activities. Billy Graham, A Parable of American Righteousness by Marshall Frady. Marshall Frady was a writer for Life and Newsweek. He has done an incredible amount of research into Billy Graham's life. He doesn't touch on the sinister side of Billy Graham, but by giving an honest report about Billy Graham he tears off their Hollywood-type mask, so to speak, that everyone has seen and believed. Marshall Frady simply wanted to tell the whole story of Billy Graham, good, bad or otherwise. He spent many hours interviewing Billy Graham and many other people involved in Billy Graham's life. When this book was read by a devout Christian, it totally devastated this person's media-built image of Billy Graham. For instance, items like Billy Graham going to dinner with a prostitute and taking her home, Billy Graham walking past his wife and not recognizing her, and Billy Graham's New York crusade refusing to allow street people into the crusade because they were dirty. However, another Christian borrowed my copy of it, and said after looking at the book he didn't see anything wrong with Billy Graham in the book. But then he just read portions of the book. Still, unless one has spiritual discernment, the book is probably not going to blast a person out of the water, because it is a biography, not an expose. Until recently, this was the only really good biography that was available for Christians. Many months before the Billy Graham 1993 Portland Crusade, the advertisements for the crusade and the crusade activity here in Portland began. Pilgrim Discount, which is one of the best Christian bookstores in the Portland area, sells both used and new Christian books. They had a used copy of Billy Graham, A Parable of American Righteousness. I watched for months to see if any Christians would buy the book. Tens of thousands of Christians got involved in the Billy Graham crusade in the Portland area, but none had the interest to read the only biography of Billy Graham available. Finally, just shortly before the crusade, a teenage Christian from Washington who had been warned about Billy Graham and who was trying to keep from being forced to attend, bought the book on a trip from Washington. This incident shows what Americans know and what they want to know about Billy Graham is shallow media hype. A Christian radio show here had the author of Billy Graham, A Prophet with Honor, on to promote his book, which was done just when the crusade was days away. A startling exposure, Billy Graham and the Church of Rome by Ian R. K. Paisley. This is perhaps the best book as far as actual documentation. The book is probably rare, and not available. Ian R.K. Paisley has made it one of his projects of his life to expose Catholicism. Because Billy Graham works more with Catholics than Protestants, Paisley as a concerned Christian obviously found himself learning about Billy Graham. Ian R.K. Paisley knows firsthand how powerful Billy Graham and his establishment backers are. They have a colossal publication strength to discredit any critic of Billy Graham in whatever manner it takes, even if it means outright lies and slander. Billy Graham reformer? Politician? Preacher? Prophet? A chronological record compiled from public sources by the Church League of America 195 1-1982. This book is from Edgar Bundy Ministries. It is a collection of articles that have appeared in the public media on Billy Graham over a period of 31 years. Billy Graham is condemned by his own words and his own actions. If people only took a look at what Billy Graham is on public record saying, it would startle them. Who is Billy Graham working for? Is he trying to build the Christian churches up, or is he trying to lay the foundation for a one-world religion? While some people may on first thought think that it is a great idea to have everyone belong to the same religious structure, they need to reflect on the dangers inherent in one single religious body with all-encompassing power. The groundwork for such a dictatorial global religious body is already partially constructed, and is revealed in other writings of Fritz Springmeier. How many people know that in 1955 and 1956 Billy Graham announced that he had a policy of sending people who come forward at his crusades to the church of their choice, whether the church or synagogue is Catholic, Protestant or Jewish? For instance, the Protestant Church Life quotes Billy Graham in its 29 Sept 1956 issue, referring to the Billy Graham New York crusade scheduled for May 1957. Dr. Graham said, "We're coming to New York not to clean it up, but to get people to dedicate themselves to God and to send them on to their own churches, Catholic, Protestant or Jewish." There is one other book worth pointing out at this point. It was not a source book for my investigation, but I know the author, and the book came out recently, so it is likely still available. The book is The Assimilation of Evangelist Billy Graham into the Roman Catholic Church by Erwin Wilson. The address is Quebec Baptist Missions, Box 113, Compton, Quebec, Canada, J0B1L0. It's nice that men like Erwin Wilson are noticing Billy Graham's love affair with the Catholic Church. He picked up on Billy Graham's statement about the Pope. Pope John Paul II has emerged as the greatest religious leader of the modern world and one of the greatest moral leaders of this century. The Saturday Evening Post, Feb. 1980. However, several of these anti-Catholic ministries are rejecting the bigger picture. They have strongly resisted learning about mind control and the exposure of the conspiracy and be wise as serpents. Because of this, several of these Christian ministries to Catholics have lots of information about Billy Graham and his close workings with the Catholic Church, but little comprehension of how the Catholic Church fits into the bigger picture, and how the New World Order is actually coming about. There has been widespread concern about Billy Graham among Christians. Because the controlled media don't report these concerns, people are not realizing the extent of the concerns which have been voiced. Even before the co-authors got involved in exposing the Illuminati and their control over religion and their plans for a new world order, there has been a long history of concern by devout Christians over Billy Graham. There has been a growing dissatisfaction among conservative Christians towards Billy Graham. The introduction to Erwin Wilson's book, which is written by Dr. Bob Jones, Chancellor of Bob Jones University, provides an introduction to the concerns Christians have about the man who has been set up by the media and the money elite to be their greatest leader. We quote only a paragraph of what Dr. Bob Jones said. Some of us who grieved over Graham's first downward steps toward compromise with apostasy and biblical unbelief knew that he was pursuing a direction from which there would be no turning back. While we grieved over him and prayed for him, we had to warn men against his ministry as we had warned Billy against his direction. The first area is doctrinal concerns by devout Christians, who have been deceived that Billy Graham thinks as they do. Christians usually take for granted that Billy Graham is sound doctrinally. The following paragraph of beliefs of Billy Graham were documented in 1993 by Fritz Springmeier in his June 1993 newsletter, with its large document packet. Mainline Christians would be shocked to find out what Billy Graham really believes and is on public record as supporting. This will help show non-Christians, who read this, that Billy Graham is not really the Christian he pretends to be. This is not to preach at non-Christian readers, for some of the non-Christian readers will agree with Billy Graham's stance. These views are written to show how a major Christian leader can have a false public image that has survived mainly because the full public record of Billy Graham's stands are kept low-key. If we are big enough to look at the deceptions of our politicians and statesmen, we must be big enough to face the deceptions of our ministers. Some of the areas that Billy Graham deviates from Scripture are as follows. He is on public record supporting homosexuality, abortion, his disbelief in a literal hell, his support and practice of infant baptism to save children, his support for the Catholic Church's worship of Mary, yet he calls himself a Protestant. He has repeatedly praised infidels and apostates as great Christians. He actively supported the American government policy to fight the Vietnam War. He would not challenge the idea that the Bible is mythology, when directly questioned. The deception doesn't stop with the Protestants. Catholic supporters have been kept in the dark about his abortion views. The deception goes way beyond Protestant, Catholic beliefs. As a programmed multiple who participates in satanic ritual, Billy Graham has deceived everyone. The second area is concerns about his support for a one-world church and a one-world government. This stems from Billy Graham's public endorsements of the World Council of Churches and the National Council of Churches. 2. Billy Graham's consistent attendance at the World Council of Churches meetings. 3. That Billy Graham has done more than anyone in the world to bring about the one world harlot church, and he has done more than anyone to unite all the Christian groups into one organization. 4. Billy Graham's support of the Pope and the Catholic Church, which is the largest Christian religion and one of the pillars of the New Age one world religious body being set up. 5. The support that the NCC and WCC gives him. 6. The support that the internationalists and globalists give Billy Graham. Billy Graham was first asked to do his Portland crusade in 1993 by the WCC/NCC representative in this area who is a homosexual, a New Ager, and leader of the ecumenical movement. The third area is concern over the lack of depth that conversions at Billy Graham's crusades have. Some of the details on this are Only 2% of the people coming forward at a crusade have never been Christians and are actually giving their life to Christ for the first time, and of these 80% fall away. 2. A great majority of people that come forward are sent to Catholic and extremely liberal churches. Extremely few are sent to solid Bible-believing churches. In the Catholic Standard and Times, Thursday, July 16, 1992, p. 10, this Catholic paper reported that 1,900 Catholics responded to Billy Graham's call to make decisions for Christ in the Philadelphia Crusade and were referred to about 250 parishes. 3. People that come forward are sent even to Jewish synagogues and New Age churches. 4. Converts are given the impression that Christ wants decisions for him, rather than that Christ wants disciples. 5. The people attending the crusades are almost all Christians, due to the high numbers of Christian counselors and the high number of church people which are always intentionally bussed in. Frady exposes this, and in 1992 a writer of the Willamette Week did a major story for the magazine detailing how she had searched the entire week at the Billy Graham crusade for an unsaved person and failed to find a single non-Christian. There were a few, but so few she didn't find any. William Eatweek, October 1, 1992, 6. Most decisions at the Crusades are for trivial things such as to stop smoking. Interestingly, Christians with discernment spoke about how hurting the churches were after the Billy Graham crusade here in Portland. They had been made wild promises of success, they were fleeced of their money, and then given a lukewarm spiritual boost. Their comments reminded me of this warning to Billy Graham clear back in the 1950s as to how he was ruining the harvest field. Part of Satan's planetary control is through religious leaders. Christians have been conditioned to believe that Billy Graham is a great prophet of God by the establishment media, who have told us for years that Billy Graham was the most respected man in America. The percentages that the controlled media have reported for Billy Graham's popularity may have been inflated. There are several studies that show how the establishment uses polls dishonestly to manipulate thinking. The establishment media is able to create ideas so firmly within the mind of the public that it becomes almost impossible to deprogram people. What people see on TV becomes what you believe. The TV image becomes real. What actually happens at a crusade is far different from the media image. In Scotland, for instance, a poll was taken of church membership 1 month before the Billy Graham Scotland crusade, and 2 months after the crusade. Church membership had actually declined substantially. So after spending millions of the Christians' dollars, Billy Graham had not even helped the church attendance of the Scottish churches. When Billy Graham holds his crusades, the churches in the area sponsor the crusade. In Poland, in a nation 95% Catholic, the churches that sponsored his crusade in Warsaw were Catholic churches, and when people went forward they were sent to Catholic churches. Yet, when the mass media report on crusades, it is made to sound like thousands of people became new Christians. Many of the devout Christians that have supported Billy Graham haven't thought through what is really going on at the crusades. They have been so caught up with the media image that they are not able to critically comprehend that the crusades are really major spiritual disasters. The book for counselors at the Billy Graham crusade here in Portland specifically stated that only Billy Graham was allowed to proselytize, that the crusade counselors were forbidden to proselytize anyone at any time during the crusade, or else they would lose their crusade badge as a counselor. See these instructions in the Billy Graham Christian Life and Witness course, Minneapolis, Amen, Billy Graham Evangelistic Association, p. 47, Instructions A.6. But thousands of the Christians in Portland who became counselors for the '92 crusade never gave it a second thought that only Billy Graham was allowed to proselytize, because they trusted Billy Graham. Money that could have gone to helping victims of mind control went toward superficial decisions for Christ. Money that could have gone to doing some serious damage to the evil, has gone for Madison Avenue hype and for big shows. On top of this, the large sums that are spent on the Billy Graham crusades serve as a cover for the network's money laundering that they do through Graham's crusade, using a series of monarch slaves in a complex series of money drop-offs. A fourth area is concern over his methodology. A body language expert says that Billy Graham's talks are simply canned. They are simply well-rehearsed canned body movements and not coming from the heart. His crusade uses Madison Avenue sales techniques instead of traditional scriptural methods to get converts. Billy Graham crusades always spend great sums of money for billboards promoting Billy Graham and bumper stickers promoting Billy Graham. The end result is that Billy Graham's name is usually promoted millions of times more often than Jesus Christ. Christianity is consistently watered down and identified with the world and its ways. And a great deal of boasting is done about numbers of decisions instead of real meaningful discipleship. A fifth area is concern over Billy Graham acceptance of communism. Although many people feel communism is dead, this area is still relevant. If you think communism is dead, go live in North Korea, where Billy Graham went in 1992, full of praise for North Korea. See Christianity Today, May 18, 1992, p. 55. By the way, Billy Graham and family have sat on the board of Christianity Today, and still control it, so it wouldn't misquote him. L. Billy Graham has repeatedly over international mass media claimed that there was no religious persecution under the communists. 2. Billy Graham has praised Mao Zedong's principles. 3. Graham has praised communist leaders on numerous occasions. 4. Dyed-in-the-wool communists who have been the ones giving orders to torture Christians for some reason feel comfortable spending time talking to Billy Graham. The actual heritage and name of Billy Graham. There is a connection between Marxism and a group of Satanists called Frankists. One of the strongest satanic cults to take control over the Jewish population was called Sabbatianism. Jacob Frank assumed the role of leader of this group, and afterward this brand of Satanism was called Frankism. Freud's sexually obsessed theories came from Frankism. Frank taught his followers to convert to another religion and hide behind that religion to practice their Satanism. One of several books on the subject of Frankism is The Contemporary Faces of Satan by Itibar Ray M. Djurjevic. Billy Graham's family when they originally came over to this nation were of the Frank family, which is related to Jacob Frank. After coming over to this nation, they changed their name to Graham, which is a Scottish name. Two groups of people who are overrepresented in the power structure over the last 200 years are Scots and Kabbalistic Satanic Jews. Obviously, not all Scotsmen nor Jews are involved in the know. Several other researchers independently discovered that Billy Graham's heritage was the Jewish Frank family. However, Fritz was beginning to suspect that there must be some kind of Jewish blood in Billy Graham's heritage, because of all the things he would stumble upon. For instance, the intimate connections Graham had with Jewish leaders and Jewish Christian ministries. And his assurances to them that they are God's chosen people, a special group. Graham privately told them, that because they are a special chosen group they don't need to come to Christ. Fritz discovered all this by accident reading Jewish literature. Further, the paper called, The C9 Report for Internal Use Only, states on page 11 that Billy Graham's daughters have lived in Israel, and that Billy Graham's son fought with the Israeli army in the Six-Day War. In the Be Wise as Serpents book, chapter 2.1, the Jewish author Gerald S. Strober in his book American Jews Community in Crisis, p. 110 states that after a resolution in February 1973 at Pittsburgh by the NCC failed to declare the NCC against converting the Jews, that Billy Graham announced the following day a statement that God had a special place for the Jews and rejected coercive evangelistic efforts. Privately, Graham has assured Jewish leaders he is against converting the Jews to Christianity. Strober also informs his readers, p. 111, that many Christian organizations that are Jewish missions take their marching orders from Billy Graham. This confirms numerous reports. So Strober in effect is saying don't worry, Graham is with us, and he controls most of the Christian organizations that are supposedly missions to evangelize us. Messianic Jewish groups are strongly pro-Billy Graham. Some of these groups have gained in size and then strangely gone back into Judaism. That kind of thing has been happening here in Portland, not to mention other localities. Now it is clearer why Jews coming forward at crusades have often been and are being referred by the crusade people to Reformed Jewish synagogues. How Billy Graham is a 33-degree Mason. This is an important issue, however, even if Billy Graham were not a 33-degree Mason, there are many things that he is doing that should warn Christians not to support him. There have been a number of people in casual conversation who have mentioned Billy Graham being a 33-degree Mason, for instance a CIA leader, and some person who is against the no, and various Masons. These accidental revelations are what can be considered casual evidence, in that it is accidentally heard. Some of the people who have read Fritz's Be Wise as Serpents book have been experiencing validation of what was written on Billy Graham by their own casual contacts with people. These types of encounters are very meaningful to the people who experience them, but their significance is hard to communicate to others. Hopefully, readers of this, who are truth seekers, will have their own casual evidence validation experience. One piece of casual evidence came from a Shriner clown. It turns out the only clowns who were chosen to perform for the Billy Graham 1993 Portland Crusade were Shriner clowns. There were non-Masonic clowns available, even some Christian clowns, but the Masons were the only ones Graham allowed to perform for him. Various people, who have worked in the system for the Illuminati, such as an ex-witch who is now a Christian, an ex-33-degree Mason now a Christian, and a CFR's person also now a Christian, all testify that Billy Graham is a 33-degree Freemason. A woman and a man who are ex-Satanists and now Christians also have mentioned about Billy Graham's Masonic membership. One has to understand that there is a close working relationship between the Lodge and the Illuminati. To progress up the ranks in Satanism, they will require you to go through Freemasonry. Freemasonry then teaches people about the symbology of the mystery religions. The lodges bring in female monarch slaves for some of their Egyptian sexual magic rituals. If the reader were to get up in the morning and your mother, sister, and brother were in the kitchen and said that your mother had just drank a cup of coffee, you would be able to tell from their faces if they were telling the truth, and you would know that your mother had drank a cup of coffee. This is the way it is for us. We know these witnesses know the truth, and we know they are not making it up. But if people don't believe that, then they need to go scrounge up their own witnesses, and risk their own hide in doing the contacting. The material we presented here is not frivolous work. As pearls of value, we hope that this research is not taken and allowed to become pearls given to swine. Because Billy Graham is such a key person for the Illuminati and the satanic plan to bring in the Antichrist and the one world religion, key parts of Graham's life have been intentionally shrouded. When he joined the Masonic Lodge c. 1948, they intentionally kept his membership more secret than others. Why? They are secret about their membership in general, but even more so if the person is a key illuminatus and a big key to their religious control. This is why they have kept the membership of Charles T. Russell, founder of the Watchtower Society, quiet. This is why they keep the memberships of the Mormon prophets secret. It has been a consistent pattern by the Masonic Lodge to keep these key people's membership very quiet. It would be much easier if we had a membership certificate, but for people who don't want to believe, no amount of evidence would suffice. In terms of a paper trail, we have the following. Billy Graham's books consistently refer to basically only Masons. Billy Graham endorsed the Masonic Demole program for youth as God's work. This endorsement by Billy Graham is in a Masonic book that is used to educate people about the craft that means Freemasonry. That book is The Clergy and the Craft, and it says that the people who are quoted in it are Masons. C. Haggard, Forrest D. Transactions, Missouri Lodge of Research, Volume No. 27, The Clergy and the Craft, p. 127. Where Graham endorses the Masonic Youth Program. In terms of witnesses who have put what they have witnessed in writing, we have the following. Jim Shaw, ex-33-degree Mason, the highest-ranking Freemason to defect to Christianity, writes about Billy Graham being at his 33-degree initiation ceremony. Huntington House refused to print his book co-authored with Tom McKenney unless they took out Billy Graham's name on page 104, and substituted a general description. See The Deadly Deception, p. 104-105. Only Freemasons are allowed to attend these initiations. See The New Age, the official organ of the Supreme Council, 33 degree. Washington, D.C. October 1961, p. 30. Some Christians have tried everything in their mind to get around Jim Shaw's testimony. and the Masonic Lodge are now claiming that he wasn't a 33-degree Freemason. There is no doubt that he was a 33-degree Mason. What we are seeing is how important it is to the Illuminati to keep Billy Graham's membership secret. Originally, Dr. Morey, who wrote a book on Freemasonry, told me over the phone that Billy Graham was a 33-degree Freemason and that he had held his membership file in his hand in the library of the House of the Temple, which is where the Supreme Council of the 33-degree has their headquarters. However, now he denies it and says that he only was told by the librarians that the file existed, but that he didn't examine the membership file. He wrote a letter to Christian News to the editor which was printed. At least, his letter to the editor of Christian News says that the Scottish Rite have a Billy Graham file. Fritz stands by his original statements about what Dr. Morey said, even though he has gone back on his original story and is getting people to think Fritz somehow invented what he told me. There are a great many things that are suspicious about Dr. Morey. His book on Freemasonry claims that Freemasonry started out a Christian organization. His book was printed by a company that uses the Knights Templar logo as their company logo, and whose company head is most likely a Freemason. If it looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, and walks like a duck, what do you think it is? Long before I actually knew Billy Graham was a 33-degree Freemason, I felt that was the most likely explanation for what I was learning of him. What caused me to think that way? Everything about the man just shouted Freemason. The way he talks, who he has as friends, etc. etc. This article is not capable of going into depth about small nuances and details, but suffice it to say that the Masons know how to broadcast to other Masons that they are a Mason. It should be pointed out some of the key people for Billy Graham's staff have been Freemasons. Let's look at a few of the key people helping Billy Graham. William M. Watson, director of the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association. He is a Freemason, and he is also president of Occidental Petroleum Corporation. Chairman of Occidental was Armand Hammer. Watson is also a member of the Development Council of the Masonic-run Baylor University. Baylor University has participated in the mind control. See also the expose of Baylor University in Be Wise as Serpents. He also was a member of the Advisory Council to the Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary in Fort Worth, which had at least 3 Freemasons on its board of trustees, and likely more. David M. McConnell, director of the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association. He is a Freemason. He was also U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, 1968–69, business associate with Illuminatus Charles Gambrell, in Belk Stores of Charlotte, North Carolina. Arthur Lee Maliko, chairman of the Billy Graham Crusade Advisory Committee for the 1973 St. Louis Crusade, 32-degree Freemason, deacon in the So. Bapt. Church. Who are some of the primary ministers that had worked with 33-degree Freemason Billy Graham over the years. Billy Graham has helped set up other 33-degree Masons in ministry. Billy Graham has placed his stamp of approval on almost every well-known apostate Christian out there. When Billy Graham had a crusade in Japan, the Japanese minister that he had up on the platform was a well-known extremely liberal Christian. A conservative Japanese was shocked. Billy Graham is also endorsing many of the books and ministries of these apostates. Some of the 3 biggest ministers in the Protestant world, Robert Schuller, Norman Vincent Peale, and Oral Roberts, are all 33-degree Masonic brothers of 33-degree Freemason Billy Graham. C. Roberts, Oral. Miracle of Seed Faith, p.9. Billy Graham has helped each of these brothers with their ministries. Robert Schuller taught principles of church growth to Unity School in Kansas City. A Christian, who used to be on staff there, said that Robert Schuller was fully aware that Luciferian initiations were going on at the school and that he didn't care. Robert Schuller, 33-degree Freemason, was helped into ministry by Billy Graham. Schaller also participates in the monarch program and is also sexually serviced by monarch slaves. Norman Vincent Peale's form of Christianity called positive thinking is actually only white witchcraft with different names. Peale simply is a Christian witch. Norman Vincent Peale, 33-degree Freemason. His church received the bulk of people who came forward at the New York Crusade. Norman Vincent Peale is a 6-degree Illuminatus, Pilgrim Society, and a 33-degree Freemason. In the magazine Psychic Magazine of San Francisco, Peale says of occultist Kreskin, "All he's doing is dramatizing what I've been preaching in my writing for years." Norman Vincent Peale controls the approximately $200 million Presbyterian Ministers Fund. He celebrated the 25th anniversary of the United Nations. He was the keynote speaker at the birthday of the late Mormon prophet Spencer W. Kimball, a secret Mason. Peale praised Kimball as a true prophet of God, and a great man of God. Peale practices witchcraft, and palms it off on unsuspecting Christians under different terminology. The false unity movement, which is so strong today, wants to unite the devout Christian with the likes of Norman Vincent Peale. Peale is a good friend of Billy Graham, and Billy Graham referred the largest number of new converts of the New York Billy Graham Crusade to Peale's church. Oral Roberts, 33-degree Freemason, helped into ministry by his Masonic brother Billy Graham. Oral Roberts has been seen by witnesses participating in SRA and mind control. Oral Roberts University and the Charismatic Movement is another important religious front. The Charismatic Movement has been infiltrated by multiples since day one. The history of the infiltration is extensive. Oral Roberts had Cherokee blood. According to some things that Oral Roberts has said, some Christians think that he received his healing powers from an old Indian who healed him through Indian shamanism when Oral was young. At times, Oral does use the same methods that spirit mediums use to heal with. According to slaves who have been deprogrammed, they were in satanic rituals with Oral Roberts. Christian ministers, who have participated in his ministry, are saying that they have seen massive swindle in his healing ministry. His university is being used as a programming center. His basketball team at one time had monarch slaves playing on it. We do not know if they still do. Under the Prayer Tower is one of the programming sites. Billy Graham, a handler himself, helped launch Oral Roberts University, and is a friend of Oral Roberts. From the Illuminati's point of view, Tulsa is the guardian city of Apollo. The city of faith is to be the center for healing from Aesculapius, a demon related to Apollo. While portraying themselves as Christians, infiltrators within the charismatic movement are carrying out satanic rituals to get demonic healing powers. Tulsa is one of, if the main center for the campaign to infiltrate Christianity via the charismatic/Pentecostal movement with programmed multiples. G. Bromioxnum, 33-degree Freemason, was head of the FCC churches, supportive friend of Billy Graham. G. Bromioxnum has a long history to him of working for the elite. Interested readers can pick up his story and be wise as serpents in the chapter that goes into the details about how the Christian churches were organized by the FCC and WCC for the Illuminati. The No is infiltrating the churches via the Earth Stewardship movement. An attempt was made at Rio de Janeiro to get an Earth Charter, but there wasn't enough time. There were lots of NOG delegates and just in general lots of people to coordinate. 4,000 attended. Another Earth Summit was promised, but instead they decided at the end of Sept/Oct of '95 to have a State of the World Forum to be held by/sponsored by the Gorbachev Foundation at the Presidio, KA. The ex-head of the KGB, Gorbachev, is now headquartered in the Presidio, a major mind control programming site. Christian basher Ted Turner was the chairman of the conference. The cost was $5,000 per person and the invitations went out to only select people. There were 100 hand-picked politicians who received invitations, along with Billy Graham and Mother Teresa. This was coordinated with the 50th anniversary of the UN, which was being celebrated all over the world. Fleecing the sheep. The charismatic movement claims to have the Holy Spirit in a special way. However, some seem to be lacking in all discernment that the Holy Spirit would give. There are several books exposing the big-name charismatic ministers. One is written by an ex-charismatic Assembly of God minister. He shows a picture in his book of an Assembly of God flyer promoting the testimony of J. Edgar Hoover. Yes, the Assembly of God promoted the testimony of J. Edgar Hoover, while he was known to be a power-hungry individual who practiced homosexuality. It was this type of hype that caused this minister to grow disillusioned with the charismatic movement's so-called spirituality. Recently, the spiritual discernment of Billy Graham and many other big-time ministries was exposed when these big Christian ministries were conned out of $550 million. Billy Graham introduced John G. Bennett to thousands of people at the recent Billy Graham crusade in Philadelphia in 1992. John Bennett gave his testimony at the crusade. Because Billy Graham, John Templeton, and Lawrence Rockefeller were apparently supportive of John G. Bennett, big-time Christian ministries trusted him. John told many of the big Christian ministries that if they gave him millions of dollars, for every million he received he would give them 2 million back. Many of the big Christian ministries gave Bennett money. In fact, he collected $550 million, which he ran off with, from ministries such as Pat Robertson's, Bill Bright's, Chuck Colson's, Luis Palau's, Westminster Theological Seminary, Wheaton College, the Salvation Army and many others. The reader may have heard of this New Era Foundation scam. That's what it was. Bennett told these Christian leaders, "Give New Era $1 million and we'll give you back $2 million. The donations of hard-earned money by many innocent Christian believers were lost. However, the Christian believers are partially responsible because the church has refused to clean house of wolves that sat in their pulpits. For instance, when Billy Graham came to the Portland area, all the various denominations from the most liberal to the most conservative supported him. Only about a dozen churches did not get involved, and only one church actively tried to expose Billy Graham, even though there has been a massive documentation exposing Billy Graham as a wolf for 30 years. When the church refuses to follow God's word and supports these men, then they must take some of the blame when these men give their millions of hard-earned dollars away to a con artist. Inadequate reactions. When people have been warned about Billy Graham, one of the common responses is for people to call up the Billy Graham crusade staff. If I ask a biologist a question about biology, I can expect to get a credible answer. If I ask a mother about her son, I can expect to get a credible answer. But how in the world can someone call up the Billy Graham crusade staff and expect to get a credible answer to the question, is Billy Graham a Mason? The person that answers the phone is likely a secretary, someone who knows Billy Graham no more than the janitor. What does that person know about the Freemasons? Because the Freemasons are a secret society. In general, there are only two basic categories of people involved with Freemasonry, and they certainly know what's going on in it, but they have taken blood oaths on penalty of death not to talk about it, and those who aren't involved with Freemasonry and don't know anything about it. There are only a few people who are not Masons, who are informed about the Masons. The answer of some secretary over the phone to the question, "Is Billy Graham a Freemason?" is of little value, because the secretary or other staff member has not had the opportunity to get reliable information. This is from the standpoint of getting a reliable witness. Calling some secretary or staff member is simply not a credible response to all the documentation. No court would view a secretary of a large organization as an expert witness qualified to settle such a dispute. The second catch is that such witnesses are not reasonably unbiased. It is expected that Billy Graham's staff would front for him any questions that could expose him to bad publicity. This last comment is not speculation. There is proof that Billy Graham's staff has consistently lied over the years to prevent negative publicity about Billy Graham. When Richard Nixon met with his political buddies to decide who to have run with him, the person he asked first in the smoke-filled room was Billy Graham. I have read the account of this in more than one place, but I will quote Marshall Frady's description of when Billy Graham was asked who he thought should run with Nixon as Nixon's vice presidential running mate. Billy Graham chose 33-degree Masonic brother, then only 32-degree, Mark Hatfield. Here is Frady's description. His assimilation into the Nixon presidency had already been well underway. In fact, at that convention in Miami when, after Nixon's nomination, Graham wound up sitting in Nixon's penthouse suite among the smoggy late-night deliberations over Nixon's vice presidential selection, Graham himself, whatever initial uncertainty he might have felt to find himself in such a political locker room session, soon pitched into the proceedings with his own effusive recommendation of Mark Hatfield. He's a great Christian leader. He's almost a clergyman. He's been an educator, and he's taken a more liberal stand on most issues than you, and I think the ticket needs that kind of balance. In 1992, Mark Hatfield, along with Prince Hall Freemason Jesse Jackson, both were on television in July of last year defending Billy Graham's actions. Mark Hatfield, according to a deprogrammed slave, has been a user of monarch's sexual slaves. New York's Union Seminary is controlled and funded by the Rockefellers. President of Union Seminary was Dr. Henry Van Dusen. Billy Graham made him a prominent person in his crusade and said he was a classic example of a mass evangelism conversion. If that is a good example of Graham's conversions, we Christians should shudder. It is no coincidence that the Southern Baptists, of which Billy Graham is a member, is controlled by the Freemasons. Brooke Hayes, president of the So. Bapt. Convention, was a high-ranking Freemason as well as part of the CFR. None of the So. Bapt. Convention's presidents have opposed Freemasonry. President Bill Clinton, a slave handler, is a member of the Emmanuel Baptist Church, which is a Southern Baptist church in Little Rock, Arkansas. The late Bill Moyers, who promoted the mystery religions, was a Southern Baptist. Moyers went to the S.W. Baptist Theological Seminary, the same school run by one of Billy Graham's staff directors. John Buchanan is another Southern Baptist. John Buchanan went to a So. Bapt. Seminary, and then worked as a front man for People for the American Way, started by Jewish Norman Lear, an anti-Christian. People might be shocked to learn of some of the New Age teachings and New Age teachers that have been allowed into the Southern Baptist churches. The Southern Baptist Youth Program is based on Masonic ideas and is very Masonic in its ritual. Summary. The reader is thanked for wading through a lot of difficult material. The reader can see why Billy Graham may well be the greatest deception that has ever been successfully pulled off. But as Abraham Lincoln said, you can fool some of the people all of the time, and all of the people some of the time, but not all of the people all of the time. Ever since the early 1950s, there have been Christians exposing Billy Graham. But the control of the Christian media and the Christian seminaries is far more extensive than most people realize. The Be Wise as Serpents book diagrams out how the Christian religious denominations are being controlled, and how the Masons and Illuminati-connected administrators and trustees have control of most of the seminaries. Billy Graham without a doubt works directly for the satanic hierarchy. But a rational and fair appraisal of what the man is, and what damage he has done to Christianity, will probably not be given much of a chance. Nobody, no matter who they are, is going to fool Christ. There will be a real evaluation done on Judgment Day, and when that day comes, Christ said, "Many will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in your name, cast out demons in your name, and done many wonders in your name? And then I will declare to them, I never knew you, depart from me, you who practice lawlessness." Mount 7:22-23. The Top Secret Amish Front, and Hutterites. It will probably assist the reader to know that both of the authors have first-hand experience with the following information about the Amish. Fritz was Amish for several years as an Amish church member in church districts in Kansas, Missouri, and Illinois. He has also visited numerous Amish settlements in the U.S. and Canada, and lived/worked with the horse and buggy Old Order Mennonites, not to be confused with the Old Order Amish Mennonites, in Ontario, Canada for half a year. He has a manuscript of a book that he wrote about the Old Order Amish Mennonites, and has gone so far as to inquire with publishers like National Geographic if they would like some of his material. He has also attended a variety of Mennonite churches, including Church of God in Christ, Men. Holy Man's, Charismatic Mennonite, Conserve. Men. And Beachy Amish churches across the U.S. He also knows firsthand that Illuminati slaves, some of who are programmers, have been infiltrated by the Illuminati into Mennonite churches. Perhaps what may come across as the strangest religious front, and it is certainly one of the biggest secrets of the intelligence agencies, is their use of the Old Order Amish Mennonites as a front. The Amish are the most pacifistic people, so the Illuminati/intelligence agencies have placed some of their best programmed assassins behind the front of being Amish. The front is real. They are Amish, well, many of them. Some were Illuminati children switched at birth to give the programmers better bloodlines to work from. Some Amish women in cult families have let the Illuminati impregnate them with stronger bloodlines. Many Nazi bloodlines were hidden after WWA under the Mennonite/Amish cover. The Mennonites and some of the more progressive Amish adopt many children. The Amish in Missouri, Jamestown, Kansas, south of Hutchinson, and Oklahoma, Guthrie, OK, Kentucky, Ohio, Holmes Company O, and Pennsylvania, Lancaster, Pa, have been involved in selling their children to the Illuminati. When the Illuminati would buy a child, they would send in one of their own midwives to help with the birth and retrieve the child. Generally, the Amish would sell their children when they realized they were going to have twins. One would be given to the cult, and one would be kept by the Amish parents. Because these children are born outside of the system, and have no birth certificates, they made excellent children to use in porn. They also can be used as expendable children to use in porn. They were often blonde-haired and blue-eyed. The Amish women were not allowed to use birth control, it was forbidden by the church, and they were not allowed to have an abortion, and it was their duty to have sex with their husbands. It is possible that some parents sold their children just to get out of the responsibility of having another child. The Amish farms in Kansas and Oklahoma and in the border states like Missouri and Kentucky are mechanized with tractors, and they don't need the large families that the Amish in other places need. Due to the strong legalism that pervades their church, some have tried to get around the tight spot that the rules place them in by selling a few unnoticed children. However, there is an active witchcraft practicing occult group within the Amish which is like a box within a box within a box. It is very secret. There are many ways of describing what is going on with the Amish. Let's describe quickly in half a page. It could be a book in itself. What a deep look at the spiritual dynamics of what is going on with their communities. The rise of Satanism within their ranks is simply a natural outgrowth of the spiritual dynamics. There were two trees in the Garden of Eden. One was the tree of life and one was the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. The first meant being transformed by the Creator who made them into the image of the Spirit of God and receiving spiritual life, but the other tree was performance. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil, religion, includes both law, good, and license, evil. As soon as a group gets legalistic, they fall from grace. They then separate themselves by their performance and say in effect, look at what we're doing, which is a form of pride. God resists the proud, so they through a number of spiritual dynamics lose fellowship with God. This means they must cling to their legalistic traditions even more, because a live relationship with God is gone. Bible studies are forbidden by most Amish church districts, and they don't get new revelation from God. They still are working off of the revelations of the 1600s, when they were traumatized and quit growing. When they split from the rest of the Mennonites, they were like a child altar split which never grows up. When a group gets legalism, they also get license, because the two grow from the same tree. Every Amish community has two large groups, the legalistic ones and the license ones. The young people are even split this way. In Lancaster County, the Groffies is the nickname of the large license group of young people who fornicate and drink. There is a smaller group of legalistic conservative young people too, who are at the other end of the spectrum. There is one group, gang might be a more appropriate name, called Jammarees, who are an unruly and destructive collection of angry wild young people. The bishops in Lancaster Company meet twice yearly to keep this large settlement of opposites together. A lot of compromise and looking the other way is done for the sake of peace. Peace at any price is the name of the game. Even before a prayer is said in church, the minister calls out, "When mer enix sin, well a merbit." This translates, "If we are in one accord, then let us pray." Because peace is so important, they are out of balance in getting it. They place peace far above truth. In order to have the appearance that everything is well, secrecy pervades everything like the air one breathes. Because their whole culture is secret, children raised in it aren't aware of how strong it is. It is simply a way of life, like it is for the Illuminati. Legalism values conformity. Conformity prefers robotic obedience over understanding. In fact, one bishop told Fritz, co-author of this book, "We don't want our young folks to understand why they do what they do, we only want obedience. Understanding is dangerous." Does the reader begin to see how the Amish make both the perfect setting for monarch mind control, and the perfect cover? The Amish are a very secret group. During their early history they suffered severe persecution. Their culture teaches them to suffer in silence, which today helps their satanic abusers infiltrate their culture. In the past in Europe, when the Catholic or Protestant Church caught them, they were tortured to death. They were hunted as animals and treated worse than animals when caught. This was the trauma that Satan did to them, and the lie that was then handed them was that if they would cloister themselves secretly in the New World away from everyone else, they would be safe. The Amish have shut out from outsiders the true flavor of their culture and beliefs. They are silent about their problems. They tell themselves that outsiders couldn't possibly be interested in their affairs. The Amish themselves are very divided from each other. The divisions between Amish groups is called Swatract. Swatract can cover anything from a mild aloofness to a full-fledged shunning, called the mare dung. The Amish aren't in general qualified to tell outsiders much in detail about their own heritage or religion because they are so isolated from the other Amish settlements and have been raised in such an anti-intellectual culture. Most Amish are content to know that the way they do things was always done this way, and that their elders and forefathers were gifted men who examine things very closely. Their social norms are not intellectually questioned by most Amish, but then American society has been very isolationist in the world and few Americans question their society and norms. Americans even rebel in the prescribed fashion. Whatever the elite tells society is the uncool, hot, stylish way to do things. The Amish are similar to the Mideast culture in that they have a very indirect approach to saying things. They do not consider it proper to speak with a negative connotation about anybody. They also instinctively give pat answers to outsiders to blunt questions. These pat answers border on being rigid, prejudiced, and simple. They serve the purpose to deter curiosity. The early Amish leaders were ex-Catholic priests, but most of the people were peasants who had little formal schooling, had little Bible knowledge, and came from southern Germany and then land where witchcraft was practiced by the common people. The spirit of witchcraft never left the Amish. It has always been with them. The folk witchcraft is called Brausch, and the craft is kept secret by old men who pass the incantations down in secret. When the Amish moved to Pennsylvania, they moved in next door to Rosicrucians. When the Rosicrucian settlements fell apart, they joined the Mennonites, thus bringing their Hermetic magic along with them. Somewhere within the Amish were some families that were undercover for the Jesuits, and were sent in as spies long ago because they were corrupt. These families have been generational Satanists, which practice pedophilia and other crimes in the safety of their isolation. They were placed within the Amish to help the Catholic Church destroy the Amish. In Europe that happened under Hitler, when all the old order Amish were arrested in 1938 and wiped out of Germany. Prior to WWA, the Nazis, part of the Illuminati, sent over a number of programmed multiples which set up an unnamed cult in upstate New York. This cult was to help Hitler take power in the US. When the Nazis won the war, they did not win the war, but 60 years later this satanic cult still operates. Now second and third generation programmed multiples are now part of this cult. Somehow this Illuminati mission coordinates with the Illuminati project to get Hitler's bloodline hidden among the Amish, although the authors are aware of Hitler's descendants being in Oregon, and Washington as well as Pennsylvania. One of them in Portland, Oregon, works for the federal government. Lancaster County is sometimes referred to as the Mother Church. This was one of the original counties which the Amish settled in when they first came over to the New World. William Penn invited Rosicrucians, Amish, and other dissident religious groups to Pennsylvania. The Satanic covens in Lancaster County, PA, consist of members from Amish, Mennonite and Brethren churches. They are not simply all Amish. Lancaster County's Amish will fellowship with all the approximately 200 other settlements of Amish around the country. What is a peculiar phenomena, is that many churches that do not fellowship with one another, will still maintain communion with Lancaster out of respect for place in Amish history. However, Lancaster County has some of the most immoral reprobate Amish that there could be. All this is hidden very well from the thousands of tourists, due to the secrecy of the Amish. The Amish do not often pay taxes, do not pay Social Security because they are exempt from the Social Security program, and send many of their children to Amish schools. They are truly a separate society which maintains rigid secrecy. If you were the New World Order or the Illuminati, where would you want to hide your assassins? The safest place is inside of the most pacifist group in the world, the Amish. Monarch mind-controlled slaves are being created out of Amish children. During WWE, Amish conscientious objectors were forced by the government to do alternate public service in lieu of military service. This was known as civilian public service. Amish and Mennonite conscientious objectors were placed into mental hospitals to help. They served at Allentown State Hosp. Allentown, PA, Cantonsville State Hosp. Cantonsville, MD, Cleveland State Hosp. Cleveland, O, Delaware State Hosp. Pinehurst, DL, Denver State Hosp. Denver, Co, Greystone Park State Hosp. Greystone Park, NJ, Harrisburg State Hosp. Harrisburg, PA, Hudson River State Hosp. Poughkeepsie, New York, Kalamazoo State Hosp. Kalamazoo, ME, Lima State Hosp. Lima, O, Livermore State Hosp. Livermore, Ca, Macedonia State Hosp. Macedonia, O, Marlborough State Hosp. Marlborough, NJ, Mount Pleasant State Hosp. Mount Pleasant, 10, Norristown State Hosp. Norristown, PA, Provo State Hosp. Provo, UT, Rhodes State Hosp. Howard, Rye, Roseburg VA State Hosp. Roseburg, or, Staunton State Hosp. Staunton, VA, Tiffin State Hosp. Tiffin, O, Wernersville State Hosp. Wernersville, PA, Ypsilanti State Hosp. Ypsilanti, ME. The author, Fritz believes that the complete story of how the Illuminati got a secret foothold into the Amish community lies in what happened in mental hospitals to the anxious to please, compliant, innocent Amish boys, who were assigned to these mental hospitals. Many people do not realize that during WWI, several Mennonite/Hutterite conscientious objectors were tortured to death by our government. Not a pretty picture when you find out how sadistic our government was willing to be toward its own citizens. Not only did the Amish boys go to lots of mental hospitals during WWI, but all of the religious groups that participated in the conscientious objector service, called civilian public service, contributed boys to the Office of Scientific Research and Development, part of the Army, which was still using these boys for experiments until December 31, 1946. What kinds of experiments were the Amish boys, who were offered up as guinea pigs, subjected to by the Alzerd? We now know that some of these experiments were very dangerous to their human guinea pigs. 1-0 classification was the Selective Service Board's conscientious objector classification. During the Vietnam War, Amish young men went into IW service, conscientious objector service, at mental and regular hospitals. Their IW service was for 2 years. Some of these young men were programmed at these hospitals. One Amish boy, after he got home from IW service, committed suicide. The secret satanic families within various Amish settlements also offered up their children. This started a large-scale super-secret operation by the CIA/intelligence agencies to set up Delta teams within the Amish. Who would ever suspect an Amishman? They have been expendable assassins for the CIA for years. These young men are strong farm boys. They have no connection between themselves and the outside world where they secretly carry out their missions, and if they die, there is no birth record, and perhaps a dozen other siblings for their family to continue on with. During the Vietnam War, the military's selective service did things differently than in WWI. Any hospital or mental hospital which applied for approval could get IW, conscientious objector, boys. The Amish put together a steering committee to work with the government and the IW service. In the IW steering committee meetings, and the author Fritz attended one, it was stated by committee members, the boys do not come back the same, from the hospitals, and that the IW service in the mental hospitals was, proving unsatisfactory and harmful. Some of the mental hospitals which received Amish boys include Columbia, Missouri's State Mental Hospital and Hospital Complex, Colorado Psychopathic Hospital in Denver, all of the hospitals that got WWI/IWS, as listed above, Central State Hospital, Indianapolis, First, New Jersey State Hospital, Greystone Park, NJ, Philadelphia State Hospital, Philadelphia, PA, plus numerous others. At any one time, there were hundreds of Amish boys in IW service. It is suspected that many of these hospitals were involved in mind control, and it is known that the Columbia, Mo complex of hospitals and Mid-Missouri State Mental Hospital, 803 Stadium Drive, Columbia, Missouri, and the Veterans Hospital across the street were involved in mind control for the CIA. A mental hospital had to apply to the Selective Service Board for approval to get IW workers. Then their personnel departments would hire the IW boys for positions such as nursing attendants. One state mental hospital administrator told Fritz that the whole IW thing was pretty confidential. The Amish Steering Committee worked with the Mennonite Central Committee, MCC, which in turn worked for some quasi-religious group which is privately funded called the National Service Board of Religious Objectors, NSBRO, still active in Washington, D.C. The Amish were slow to act, but by the end of the Vietnam War, they had managed to get some of their farms approved for IW service, and in 1971, the steering committee was able to announce that 70 Amish IW boys were working on Amish farms in 8 states, rather than in hospitals. However, this late change was too late to protect their settlements from infiltration from sophisticated Illuminati mind control. How it is done. A programmed Amish boy will likely be contacted by what is called a cutout. This is the secret contact person who maintains contact between the handler and the Amish Delta. Cutouts can either be given several slaves, a block cutout, or in other cases only know the upline handler and downline person, a chain cutout. If further secrecy is needed by the handler, he can use sterile telephones which the Illuminati/CIA have, which cannot be traced, even by the telephone companies. When an Amish boy is activated and sent out on an assassination mission for the Illuminati/intelligence agencies, he is a professional at what he has been trained and programmed to do. Amish boys, programmed to be assassins, are used in what their handlers call wet ops. This intelligence lingo means that human blood will run. Wet ops, also called black ops, are debriefed by a briefing team. The Amish multiple will have to give a detailed account of the finished operation, once under hypnosis, once with a polygraph, and once under the drug scopolamine, a truth serum. And when the debriefing team, which includes a mind control programmer, is satisfied that all of the inconsistencies between the different accounts have been ironed out, then the programmer will block out all memory and guilt of the operation. The handler may write a blind memorandum, which has no file, no or letterhead or name. Then Amish boy's assassination altars will be praised for having done a great service to humanity and to his country. The Amish boy can now be sent home to milk cows and work on his labor-intensive tobacco farm without any nagging guilt or horrible memories surfacing to trouble him, at least in theory. Trained assassins do have memory flashes, as all monarch slaves have, but they are only bits and pieces. People also do not realize that the Amish live in many more states than Pennsylvania. They move all over the United States. If an Amishman was traveling on a CIA mission, there are numerous of excuses that could be made for why he could be on the move. There are far more Amish young people away from the Amish settlements than people realize because they dress like the world. Many young people leave with the knowledge that they can go back years later and be accepted back into their community. What are some of the mitigating factors in all of this? The Amish do their own butchering. They are down-to-earth people who are not afraid of blood. Essentially all Amish children grow up helping with butchering, and seeing life and death played out every day on their farms. The Amish do not embalm their dead, and have their own cemeteries. The satanic cult within the Amish can reopen the graves and carry out satanic ceremonies afterward. Their cemeteries are small, almost hidden sites with markers hidden in grass. Some of these graveyards blend in with their rural settings. Elmo, Joseph, and Victor Stoll are some prominent Amish men. Joseph and Elmo have traveled a great deal to Central America. Joseph wrote a book on child training which teaches parents how to break a child's will. This author is supportive of discipline and respect. The book is pointed out only because it is a paper trail to show that the Amish discipline and the Illuminati's discipline at times can be similar. The only person who might see an Amish boy being disciplined, since they are a rural people, would be the immediate family or an occasional Amish guest. An Amish man seeing a father carrying out the monarch steps to build dissociation would likely not see anything wrong. If the guest did see something wrong, that is too strict or mean, the objections would be kept very low-key. For sure, no non-Amish would ever hear about it. The Illuminati families like the Dukes and Reynolds control tobacco production and cigarette manufacturing. In order to keep their lifestyle in Pennsylvania, the Amish have had to grow tobacco for the Illuminati-controlled companies. This author can only speculate what economic leverage that has given the Illuminati over the Pennsylvania Amish. Hiding a major programming center. The blueprints of the Portland Mormon Temple at Lake Oswego, or which sets over a secret underground programming site, were changed overnight after they were looked at. The original blueprints showed that Lake Oswego had allowed the building code to broken. The blueprint was changed, showing that Lake Oswego's city employees were working along with the Mormon Church and the CIA to keep everything running smooth with their high-tech secret underground programming center, which has the front of being sacred temple grounds. 3 separate monarch slaves independently described this underground installation, and there are other evidences of it too. In order to gain access to the underground programming tunnels, a person has to place their palm on the wall, where a disguised instrument identifies a person's hand. The entrances are disguised using the most sophisticated techniques. One is from the temple laundry building south of the temple and another is from the hotel south of the temple. This hotel has a strange hard-to-find entrance to its parking lot, almost as if they haven't wanted uninvited guests. Tunnels are widely used at the other various programming sites. External and internal deceptions. There are some stock tools of deception that are used both externally on the world and internally on the slave when their system is programmed and structured. Later in the book we will cover the structuring. Since this chapter covers deceptions, we will discuss them here. But the reader needs to bear in mind, they will be employed in the structuring/programming phases of the slave's life. The tools are deflection, blinds, slides, Hegelian dialectics, and deniability. Deflection is taking something good and deflecting its purpose. This is a stock tool. For instance, loyalty and obedience can be good virtuous things if given to the correct authority. But deflected to the false sadistic authority, they are disastrous. They use deflection to redirect the power of truth which is opposed to them. Healthy foods, benevolence, ecology, love, acceptance, etc. are all part of the Creator's Christian walk. These truths and other are deflected from their original purpose of glorifying the Creator to glorifying their own programs. Rather than publicly opposing Christianity, they rename their own movements Christian, and then proceed to do very little for Christ, and everything for Lucifer. They are even deflecting worship of Jesus Christ onto worship of a demon named Jesus. The next externally and internally used stock tool is called blinds. These are deliberate deceptions placed within their own writings to confuse the uninitiated. HPB gives a good description of the use of these, so do Masonic writers like Albert Pike. HPB writing describes the use of blinds in The Secret Doctrine, Volume 5 Ada edition, p. 435. Blinds are used in CIA documents. They are incorporated into the scripts that the altars receive. For instance, the in vitro moon child ceremonies are not revealed to the non-hierarchy altars, but they are told that the moon children have to do with the cage tortures. Slides are truth that has been warped just slightly to take an investigative person into a dead end. An example of a slide is that the New World Order is satanic, but that only Nazis and stupid people think that Jews are involved. This is a slide, because then the Rothschilds who hide behind their Jewishness cannot be mentioned as suspects without people yelling anti-Semitism. In reality, exposing these abusers has nothing to do with anti-Semitism, it's simply that all abusers, no matter what good front they have, need to be correctly identified as dangerous. Another example, an altar who pretends to be helpful is placed in the system who says that the door to get to a castle internally is the 5th door on the right in such and such hall. The answer is correct, but the door must be opened using the left side, rather than the right side where the doorknob is located. Because the answer doesn't pan out, then the idea that the door is the correct door is discarded, and the altar's knowledge is suspect. Lots of psychiatrists are writing papers about MPD with slides. They give some truth, and then they give people a path to go down that will dead-end them from ever finding the truth. They use Hegelian dialectics. This dialectic process doesn't happen on its own, so it often has to be forced into happening. The idea is that each idea, ism, called a thesis, Like say capitalism, naturally by definition has an opposite, an antithesis. In capitalism the antithesis is communism. The conflict between the two produces a synthesis. By controlling both ends of the conflict, one controls the end product, the synthesis. More than not, the one world power can be seen working behind both sides of many conflicts. Indeed, the secret societies have been historically shown to be behind all the revolutions and wars in modern Europe since the American Revolution. In religious conflict, both sides are often being manipulated. Some of the various groups openly admit their strategy is designed to create a synthesis. You will find Hegelian dialectics has been introduced into the U.S. educational system by the Skull and Bones Order, an Illuminati group. It was adopted in Russia by the Slavophiles in the 19th century. Communism, Nazism, Fabians, most New Age groups, liberation theology, and other parts of the power use Hegelian dialectics. Hegel in turn based his system on the ancient Greek atomists, especially Democritus. Hegelian dialectics is built into the conflicting scripts that alters are given. Slaves who are twinned to another slave will find Hegelian dialectics employed in their twinning programming. The Hegelian dialectics can be worked in with the double binds that the programmers love to use. Esoteric language. Indirect interference with truthful information getting out. This is done by stealing the impact of the truth, by printing a parallel story with disinformation at the same time, or leaking an opposite story with disinformation at the same approximate time. Disinformation leaks can be done through the mass media, or an individual author. G. Deniability. When orders are given and language is used, it is on purpose vague so that the guilty can deny their guilt. At this point, it might be appropriate to cover some standard CIA tactics. They use some monarch slaves as live letter drops. An LLD is a person who will remail spy letters. They will use dead drop boxes, which are simply places that an item or message is concealed to be retrieved by some other criminal in the network. They may give the slave a gift which then has to be passed on. They may protect written message by writing it on edible paper. Safe houses are used, indicated by things such as to lion statues along with prearranged OK signals, such as the position of a flower pot. D. Internal deceptions. When building an internal world, the programmers use every trick in the book to hide things. First the abuse has to be hidden in silence, and then the MPD has to be hidden. Next, the real core needs to be hidden. Then, the purpose of a monarch slave needs to be hidden. All the time that this is going on, the programmers must constantly work at keeping the programmers' identities hidden, and their programming sites hidden. Programmers usually have cover names when programming, and then hypnotically have the victim see them as something else. For instance, Dr. Green had victims see him as a cricket. He even used a cricket noisemaker while programming, that clicked. In recent times, the programmers and handlers are programming their slaves to believe that they are aliens. The slave will generally be lied to that they have a twin somewhere. Internally, the programmer will begin making the system with the core-related alters and then the front alters. The front alters will be rearranged in a fashion that the structure of the system is confused. The front alters will be given heavy programming, to convince them that nothing ever happened to them. They had a wonderful life. They will be given fictitious stories about the programming, so that almost every item in a system has a cover story to mislead an alter about what is going on. Many things are placed in boxes. Clowns programmed to cut are jack-in-box clowns that pop up when an alter even thinks unapproved thoughts. Some of the important things in a system may be hidden out front. An alter on the front may think it is stupid, and yet they have access to internal maps of the entire system which they can remember only on code. If a person, such as a therapist or nosy alter, goes to look deep in the system for the material, he might be frustrated. Under a fanatically unsexual, Asexual altar will be a sexual altar. Under a stupid altar may be an altar gifted in a language or art. Altars are very often hidden behind opposite types of altars. Important things in the system, and many unimportant things, are all well guarded. Sometimes particular altars have to serve as the guards. Some of these guards are called gatekeepers. Gatekeeper altars will appear near the surface of a system, and then again deep in the system about level 10 and 12. Gatekeeper altars are altars that the programmer must go through to get to deeper levels. The gatekeeper altars are very heavily programmed to keep them in place. They will receive intensive lies. Some of the access triggers which must accompany the verbal codes are kept secret, by virtue of the fact that no person in their right mind would use them, such as needles, electroshocks, or slaps to certain parts of the body to trigger deep altars to take the body. Items in a system will be disguised, such as the clockmaker altar/demons will make clocks to appear in the system like anything they want. The only way these can be adequately identified is that these clocks are always disguised as gold items. As the programmers work, they like to find word games, plays on words and double binds. They will also put in scrambling programs, defaulters and foreign language codes to help protect their secrets. The altars who look the least to have programming may have the most. Duplicate altars of most altars are created, so that even the altars themselves don't know if it is themselves or another altar. These duplicates are called mirrored images and looking glass people, LGPS. Some of the mirrored images may turn out to be demonic entities that have been placed using high-level demonology. Suicide altars, who are trained to have a big smile and be clowns, mask their intention to kill the body when they take the body of a slave. A popular method for hiding things within the occult world has been boxes within boxes. A Masonic organization will have a rite within a secret rite, with a secret group, with an insider clique. Common everyday items that surround the slave will be given special meanings. The songs the slave hears on the radio will for instance have code words. The programmers, due to the corruption of the music industry, knows what hit songs are coming out, and they will haul their slaves in and program them according to the lyrics of the soon-to-be hits. The lyrics will be written so that programmed meanings can be attached to certain words and lines. Something as innocent as watching TV, listening to the TV, or to a sermon may actually be programming a special message into the victim. Hand signals will even be done over the news or other shows. For instance, Bill Clinton at his inauguration made a satanic signal during the inauguration ceremony. This sign of Satan is a standard hypnotic induction hand signal for slaves. Clinton waves the sign of Satan with his left hand at his inauguration. This is a hypnotic induction signal for slaves. Although some might interpret this as, "I love you," which is handed by the right hand of a deaf person, this left-handed signal will induct slaves no matter what some people think the meaning is. No wise person would knowingly choose to fight their opponent blind and deaf, yet that seems to be the choice which many nominal Christians are choosing. They would like to live in denial and to characterize this book as doomsday stuff and then dismiss and ignore this material. They want to eat, drink and be happy. If people think that by putting their heads in the sand they can escape the future, or even the present difficulties, they may be in for a rude surprise. The use of esoteric language. One method of deception is the use of esoteric language. Esoteric terms are understood by those deep in the occult, but are misunderstood by the common people. The best example is the term, Saturn. Saturn. The word Saturn consistently turns up as an important word for the Illuminati and upper levels of the occult. Because Saturn is such an important concept, it should be covered in this part of the book. Therapists may encounter something to do with Saturn in a programmed multiple. Before Fritz began researching the elite of the occult world, Saturn was merely meant an enormous planet 95 times the size of the Earth's mass, the sixth of the solar system in an orbit of 29.5 years around the Sun. This means that the co-authors of this book are less than 3 Saturnian years old. Fritz was also aware that Saturn was the father of all gods in the mythology of the ancient world. David M. Talbot in his book The Saturn Myth documents how all over the world Saturn has been worshipped even more than the sun god. Saturn has been the secret god of the occult world. When we read in Dirt 18:9-10, when thou art come into the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee, thou shalt not learn to do after the abominations of those nations. There shall not be found among you anyone that maketh his son or daughter to pass through the fire, or that useth divination, or an observer of times, or an enchanter, or a witch. All of these practices are abominations done by Satanists today and are becoming commoner among Americans. Note that the first item mentioned by Moses in this passage was putting children into the fire, of Moloch. Commentary on the Pentateuch, EA, reprint, Grand Rapids, Me. Erdman's Publishing Company 1949, p. 393. Kiel, Carl F. and Franz Delitzsch, on DT 18:9-10, Moses groups together all the words which the language contained for different modes of exploring the future and discovering the will of God, for the purpose of forbidding every description of soothsaying, and places the prohibition of Moloch worship at the head, to show the inward connection between soothsaying and idolatry, possibly because februation, or passing children through the fire in the worship of Moloch, was more intimately connected with soothsaying and magic than any other description of idolatry. The worship of Moloch was the worship of Saturn. There are perhaps various routes one can take to learn this. One route is a very close examination of the scripture, especially the Old Septuagint. Scriptures actually write of this fact in Amos 5:25-26 and Acts 7:41-43. Amos wrote, Did ye bring unto me sacrifices and offerings in the wilderness 40 years, 0 house of Israel? Yea, ye have borne the tabernacle of your king, Sikuth Moxam, or in the Septuagint it reads, Scan to Moloch, and the shrine, Kian, of your images, the star of your God, which ye made to yourselves. Amos 5:25-26. The Christian Stephen quotes these passages of Amos and connects it with the worship of the golden calf, bull or Taurus. His words on this are recorded in Acts 7:41. He further connects it in the next verse with the worship of the host of heaven. In line with translations like the Septuagint, he states in verse 43 that Amos 5 refers to the cult of Moloch and the star of the god Rephan. Hebrew writing consists of only the consonants. The vowels can be added with what are termed vocalizations, which are dots. The Jewish scribes in their contempt for heathen gods placed vocalizations, vowel indicators, on the word Moshe, MLCH, from a Hebrew word for shame. Because the incorrect vocalization was added out of contempt for the heathen names of abominable gods, the word Moshe, Saturn worship, has been mistranslated by some translators. Further, the word Shi'an, Kaimanu in Assyria, has been represented by the word Rephan in Acts 7:43. Rephan is Kaivan, Shi'an, which is the Arabian and Syrian way of saying Saturn. Rephan apparently was a very limited or localized way of saying Saturn. The adoration of the calf, bull, in the wilderness was an important act of defiance by the Israelites while Moses went up on the mountain to speak to God face to face. This worship of the bull was actually worship of Saturn. Some call this star worship, and the bull was worshipped because at that time the constellation Taurus, the bull, marked the position of the sun at the time of the spring equinox. The fact that the calf was gold was no accident. Gold has many satanic connotations. For a modern occult reference connecting the bull, astrology and gold together, see Esoteric Astrology by Alice Bailey, Lucy Trust, 1951, pp. 378-79. Various scholars on ancient religion have written that the worship of Moloch was Saturn worship. For instance, Siculus Diodorus wrote, "There was a brazen statue of Saturn putting forth the palms of his hands, bending in such a manner toward the earth, as that the boy who was laid upon them, in order to be sacrificed, should slip off, and so fall down headlong into a deep burning furnace." The ancient Roman circus, like so many public activities in America, was based upon the occult. The circus had 7 circuits, and had a pyramid in the center with 3 altars, one to Saturn, one to Jove, and one to Mars. This is an example of what the common people knew about Saturn. Moloch, then, was the sun god, during the zodiac period from Taurus to Serpens and Scorpio, which is when the sun is hottest. The Babylonians referred to Saturn as the star of the sun. In the Mithraic mysteries, Saturn was the sun god. See Hall, Manly P. The Lost Teachings of All Ages. p. Facing 21. In fact, Saturn was the sun god of many of the pagan religions, and was the foundation of the solar temple. Ibid. Hall tells us on page 97, lower left, that Saturn is the foundation of the solar temple. The 10 tribes of the Israelites fell into the ritual sacrifices of Moloch, Saturn worship and sacrifice, which brought them their judgment of Assyrian captivity. 2 KGS 1716, 17 Astrology, witchcraft, and ritual sacrifice were also associated with Saturn worship. Isaiah the prophet tells those who worship Saturn, "Let now the astrologers, the stargazers, the monthly prognosticators, stand up, and save thee." Isa 47:13. Saturn did not save the Israelites from captivity. Ex-Illuminati members have revealed that Saturn is Satan. Yes, Saturn is Satan. The Satanic Illuminati hierarchy teach the high-level students that those who serve Saturn promote the return of the lost son Saturn. The religion of Saturn is Saturnian Gnosis, which turns out to simply be a rehash of the Gnosticism that the high-level Satanists believe in. Saturn is severe. Jupiter is mild. The merging of Saturn, severity, with Jupiter, mildness, is the creation of the new Golden Age according to high-level Satanic hierarchy teachings. The Earth has been caught in a battle between a bipolar world, the inner solar logos, and the outer Saturnian sphere. The trans-Saturnian planets actually belong to Alcyone, which eventually gets its planets returned. This may be the reason that the Satanic hierarchy has treated us to good aliens from the Pleiades. Alcyone is a star in the Pleiades. Page 161. Saturnian Gnostic teachings are that darkness contains the light. What this means is that darkness is necessary for light to exist. And light appears within the matrix of darkness only by the demiurge Saturns, the Logos. This is what they teach. According to Albert Pike in the Masonic textbook Morals and Dogma given to 320 Masons, the work of the sun is the perfecting, also known as the deification of man. Christians view that it is Satan's work to teach men that they can be deified, which is rebellion to the one and only true God. Secret high-level teachings. In secret satanic rituals, the Grand Master has a scepter which represents his authority to wield power through the Lord of this world, who is known as Saturn. New Age leaders are calling Saturn, Sanat Kumara. A devil by any name is still a devil. In a dialogue with a Mother of Darkness, this Mother of Darkness also provides some interesting information. The dialogue went like this. Mother of Darkness, Saturn is the gateway that must be opened. For a season God has winked that man might be illuminated. But excessive light destroys. Men must not forget his destiny is concerned with loving regeneration of the earth, Mother Gaia worship, and balance. Soon the other eye of God must open. Those who are illuminated have kept the balance point. The majority of mankind has not. Few seek the ancient seed of wisdom that springs from the brow of Lucifer. Man becomes forgetful of his spiritual ancestry and destiny. They are alone, keepers of nothing. They fill the earth with their passing and crowd the plains with nothingness. They are a waste of the energies. And so the other eye must open. Each man shall receive abundance in what he seeks. Some call it karma. Interviewer: what do you mean by the other eye? Mother of darkness, the other eye of God, as some would say. Mosh. Cleansing fire. The outstretched arms of Mosh. Interviewer: what has that got to do with Saturn? Mother of darkness, everything. This is a most secret thing. Saturn is the gateway. The point at which all thought is fixed. The point at which all feeling shall be projected as the eye opens. Much ritual and preparation has gone into the issuance through the gateway of the ancient ones. There has been a gathering of the elemental essence to clothe them. A strengthened invisible quintessence to hold them in this plane at the time of Advent. Interviewer: and what will be the result of this Advent? What will it mean? Mother of darkness, a restoring of balance. Those who do not seek wisdom shall cease. Those who are so bound to the earth that they forget the light shall cease. When the other eye opens, the dawn shall come. The golden dawn shall be upon us, and the Sun of Righteousness shall rise with healing in his wings. The urge to sacrifice others is a gift. It is a liberation from the awful rigidity, for at least it permits an awareness of other humans. However badly treated as a result of that awareness, they have served an important purpose. The balance is kept and the light dwells upon the illuminated. The energy is released into the circle and is converted into something powerful and useful. In this way you can see they do not truly die. Light increases. Wisdom grows. Death begets life. The sacred cycle of the ancients. The earth shall regenerate herself when the eye of Mesh opens. There the reader has it, secret teachings from a mother of darkness on Saturn. Gnosticism believes that there is a force, not Almighty God. The force as it is called can be used for evil or good. Within the hierarchy of the Satanists, Moriah, their thinking has no problem understanding that Lucifer is the same person as Satan. Satan is what happens when the evil side of the force is being used, and Lucifer is that person when the good side of the force is being used. As in all of the mystery religions and in the occult world in general, people are told different things at different levels. Most people don't want to serve evil. They want to think they are good. Their pride motivates them to want to be thought of as good and great. They will easily follow Lucifer, but are not going to admit to themselves or anyone that they are following Satan. No problem, they are allowed to think they are Luciferians. Or if being a follower of Lucifer is too strong a statement, they can be a worshipper of almost thing. Satan in his pride has provided esoteric teachings on the worship of just about everything. There are esoteric teachings about worshipping rock, mountains, trees, the stars, animal spirits, Mother Earth, etc. If one probes deep enough into the layers of hidden meanings, all these worships go back to Satan. The 5 primary interlocked concepts of Satan are all represented by the serpent, which are Lucifer, also known as light bearer or godhood, search for light or wisdom, sun worship, the sun god, or energy, fire also called Kundalini force, and the regenerative principle, which is phallic and sex worship. These 5 interconnected concepts are represented worldwide by snakes, serpents, and represent worship of the supreme serpent Satan. The externalization of the hierarchy. The big event or operation that is being carried out is the externalization of the hierarchy. Satan's secret hierarchy with its pure Satanists have been around for thousands of years. But the satanic conspiracy to control mankind is to become an open conspiracy. The hierarchy is to be externalized. And the elimination of Christians, those who haven't sought worldly wisdom, that worldly wisdom which comes from Satan, is to pave the way for Satan's appearance. The satanic occult conspiracy is to leave its secret confines in Masonic temples and oddfellow halls, and is to permeate society in general. This is what has been happening. The real light must go out for the dark side to feel comfortable coming completely out. The mysteries, also known as the mystery religions, are the mysteries that one is initiated into when one joins Freemasonry. In fact, the very first item any prospective Masonic candidate must do is fill out a form requesting to be initiated into the mysteries. The mystery religions were actually veiled forms of the worship of Lucifer or Satan. Lucifer is simply Satan dressed up as the light bearer. In the mystery religions the disciples are taught that the spirits of men are the powdered bones of Satan. When one learns who Satan is, it is a rather distasteful idea to think that men are taught that their bodies belong to Satan. Further, Freemasonry teaches about Hiram Abiff and Chaim. It turns out when we study the Hiranic legend by Freemasonry's best philosopher that we learn who Santa Claus is. Santa is a scrambling of Satan. Anyway, the Hiranic legend goes like this according to Freemasonry great expert on the mystery religions: Saturn, the old man who lives at the North Pole, and brings with him to the children of men a sprig of evergreen, the Christmas tree, is familiar to the little folks under the name of Santa Claus, for he brings each winter the gift of a new year. Part of the symbols are displayed to the initiated, but he is intentionally led astray by false interpretations. Masonry conceals its secrets from all except the adepts, the sages and the elect, and uses false explanations for its symbols to mislead those deserving to be misled. This is according to the great Freemason Albert Pike in his book Morals and Dogma. It should come as no surprise that Saturn is one of the items which is mentioned by various Masonic authors. For instance, the Freemason Regan, who is considered an expert on Freemasonry, wrote, "This is the important phenomenon, the ineffable mystery, the key to nature, which the ancient sages succeeded in discovering, and which they adopted as the basis of Masonic doctrine. It is interpretation, the revolting atrocities of subject of Masonic legends, according to Saturn, were considered interesting enigmas, which involve facts worth our notice." Regan, Tyler General de la Franc-Maçonnerie, p. 21919, as quoted in Mark Gordon. The Hidden Power Behind Freemasonry, Burnsville, M.N., Wiseman Pub. 1990, p. 109. Alice Bailey's Esoteric Astrology states that Saturn is the Lord of Karma, p. 105. Venus and Saturn shall rule men during Aquarius. p. 148. Saturn is the planet of discipleship. We stand at the gateway of the new world, of the new age and its new civilization, ideals and culture. p. 148. The Occult Book, a treatise on cosmic fire, pp 1196 to 1207, states that Saturn is the fifth creative hierarchy. This is the type of stuff that the KBA comes out with. And American businesses which are controlled by the Illuminati are getting into the act of bringing the occult out into society. Ford called its car Taurus, Bull the Pleiades, another car is named Aries, which is another occult astrological name. Then there is the car named Saturn. In conclusion, Saturn turns out to be an occult name for Satan. Santa turns out to be an occult name for Saturn. It also turns out that the name Saturn has been used for Satan for centuries by the occult. The ritual sacrifices to Mars was Saturn worship. The opening of the Eye of Saturn is the materialization of hordes of demons taking place during this time period. High-level Illuminati, who will gather together in Atlanta in the summer of 1996, under the cover of the 96 Olympics, will carry out high-level rituals to open up a large hole for the materialization of hordes of demons to complete their push toward a world dictator. The use of the name Saturn is an example of how Satanism operates under the cover of layers of deception. Many Christian words also have occult meaning. There is a Morning Star Church in Tulsa which ministers to victims of Illuminati trauma-based total mind control. There is also a prophetic magazine named The Morning Star, which is very slick and glossy. On the other side of things, the term, the morning star, Stella Matutina in Latin, is another name for Lucifer. Stella Matutina is also the name of a Kabbalistic black magic lodge which Satanist Aleister Crowley led when the Golden Dawn reorganized in 1903. There are morning star rituals done by Illuminati members. One Illuminati slave, who was trained to infiltrate Christian churches and turn them toward the New Age movement, channeled a demon named Jesus. He infiltrated Christian churches for decades, and when he spoke about Jesus, he was referring to the demon he channeled. We know about this because one day, his front altars gave their life to Jesus Christ, and he abandoned his job of infiltration, and sought spiritual help. People need to understand that almost all Christian terms have dual meanings. Just because a term sounds familiar doesn't mean it is being used in the way that a sincere Christian would understand them. In summary, to summarize, the Illuminati are manipulating technology, language, ritualistic activity, subliminal awareness, fear, lust, human vulnerabilities, and conflicts. These manipulations are external deceptions, which help cover up their trauma-based mind control. They use the best covers as fronts. They use fiction, the best of religious fronts, traveling entertainment fronts, and the cover of national defense. They use deflection, blinds, slides, Hegelian dialectics, deniability, and esoteric language. They use agent provocateurs, clean agents, legends, and safe houses. The Illuminati have refined the art of deception far beyond what the common man has imagined. The very life and liberty of humanity requires the unmasking of their deceptions. That is what this book is about. Back, Springmeier and Cisco Wheeler, next ch6, Burnsville, MN, Wiseman Pub. 1990, p. 109, Alice Bailey's Esoteric Astrology states that Saturn is the lord of karma, p. 105, Venus and Saturn shall rule men during Aquarius. p. 148, Saturn is the planet of discipleship. We stand at the gateway of the new world, of the new age and its new civilization, ideals and culture. p. 148. The Occult Book, a treatise on cosmic fire, pp 1196-1207 states that Saturn is the fifth creative hierarchy. This is the type of stuff that the KBA comes out with. And American businesses which are controlled by the Illuminati are getting into the act of bringing the occult out into society. Ford called its car Taurus, Bull the Pleiades. Another car is named Aries, which is another occult astrological name. Then there is the car named Saturn. In conclusion, Saturn turns out to be an occult name for Satan. Santa turns out to be an occult name for Saturn. It also turns out that the name Saturn has been used for Satan for centuries by the occult. The ritual sacrifices to Mars was Saturn worship. The opening of the Eye of Saturn is the materialization of hordes of demons taking place during this time period. High-level Illuminati, who will gather together in Atlanta in the summer of 1996, under the cover of the 96 Olympics, will carry out high-level rituals to open up a large hole for the materialization of hordes of demons to complete their push toward a world dictator. The use of the name Saturn is an example of how Satanism operates under the cover of layers of deception. Many Christian words also have occult meaning. There is a Morning Star Church in Tulsa which ministers to victims of Illuminati trauma-based total mind control. There is also a prophetic magazine named The Morning Star, which is very slick and glossy. On the other side of things, the term, the morning star, Stella Matutina in Latin, is another name for Lucifer. Stella Matutina is also the name of a Kabbalistic black magic lodge which Satanist Aleister Crowley led when the Golden Dawn reorganized in 1903. There are morning star rituals done by Illuminati members. One Illuminati slave, who was trained to infiltrate Christian churches and turn them toward the New Age movement, channeled a demon named Jesus. He infiltrated Christian churches for decades, and when he spoke about Jesus, he was referring to the demon he channeled. We know about this because one day, his front altars gave their life to Jesus Christ, and he abandoned his job of infiltration, and sought spiritual help. People need to understand that almost all Christian terms have dual meanings. Just because a term sounds familiar doesn't mean it is being used in the way that a sincere Christian would understand them. In summary. To summarize, the Illuminati are manipulating technology, language, ritualistic activity, subliminal awareness, fear, lust, human vulnerabilities, and conflicts. These manipulations are external deceptions, which help cover up their trauma-based mind control. They use the best covers as fronts. They use fiction, the best of religious fronts, traveling entertainment fronts, and the cover of national defense. They use deflection, blinds, slides, Hegelian dialectics, deniability, and esoteric language. They use agent provocateurs, clean agents, legends, and safe houses. The Illuminati have refined the art of deception far beyond what the common man has imagined. The very life and liberty of humanity requires the unmasking of their deceptions. That is what this book is about. Chapter 6, Science No. 6. The use of electronics and electricity. Microwaves for programming. Prozac and slaves and microwave towers. The use of waves and electricity to implant thoughts. Tracking/ID implants. Monitoring implants. Communication implants. The Alex system intersects with the Monarch mind control programming. Accessories. In summary, these photos printed in a magazine in the fall of 1981 show electric prod marks on the necks of these two slaves who were used for porn. Another basic component of the Monarch program is lots of electroshock. Stun guns, staffs with hidden electric cattle prods, and cattle prods are frequently used on the slaves. Electroshock is used to create the dissociation from trauma during the programming, and later it is used to remove memories after the slave has carried out a mission, or to instill fear and obedience in a reluctant slave. Slaves generally carry horrible body memories of excruciating electroshock tortures to their entire bodies. As the slaves begin a therapeutic deprogramming process, they will recover these horrible memories, not to mention many other painful memories. A slave often shows electroshock marks on their feet, or back, or buttock or legs after they have been used. An owner of a slave will ordinarily carry a stun gun. This is perhaps a 120,000 DC volt stun gun to erase and compartmentalize memories. But some of the stun guns go up to 200,000 volts DC to erase the memory of his slave. They will apply their stun guns to the base of the skull. After giving programming instructions, they will usually give a high voltage shock to the base of the skull to embed the instructions deep in the subconscious. They often use hypnotic cues along with the shock. For instance, they will tell the slave they are now going over the rainbow, and that when the sun goes down they will forget everything, before they shock the body. The shock destroys and scrambles the memory which is still stored in the short-term memory section of the brain. They must shock the person within 24 hours, to ensure that the short-term memory doesn't get into long-term memory as a coherent memory. This means that if a slave is being used daily, they get electroshock daily. Types of devices used by handlers: a cylindrical type cattle prod with 3/4 between the contact points is used externally and internally. This is manufactured by Hotshot Products, Incorporated, Savage, Minnesota 55378. Model B12. They have a red or black rubber handle with an overall length of 12. The low voltage is between 10,000–15,000 volts. The medium voltage is 12,000 to 20,000 volts. A bruise on the buttocks will be black and blue spots about 1/1/2 diameter each. A handheld one-type shock prod which has 2/4 between its contact points. It uses a rechargeable battery pack. The prod, wand, is 2/1/2 long, and unwieldy to handle. Various farm supply companies, livestock equipment, sell this. The medium voltage is 12,000 to 20,000. A stun gun which is exactly 2, between the contacts with a 9-volt battery. This stun gun was created for law enforcement, and is generally regarded as the best device for dropping a victim or for inducing hypnosis, or setting in a hypnotic program. Its high voltage is 35,000 to 120,000 volts. It is a lightweight, 12 ounces, compact device, 7x2x1. This device will leave deep red dot holes, scars and cancerous moles. The victim will develop moles from the repeated use of this device. The muscled areas of the victim are preferred. For instance, the muscled area just below the shoulder blade. Farrell Instrument Company of Grand Island, NE makes a cattle prod with an adjustable voltage control. Their long-distance wireless shocker called Personal Shocker can shoot a shock about 75 indoors and 300 feet outdoors. The control box is handheld, and the receiver is a leather case. The shock can be adjusted from 9 to 800 volts, current is 5 milliamperes, and it lasts 1 to 2 milliseconds. This personal shocker was manufactured to be used on people. An electronic firm in Tuge car makes a shock box used in programming. An electronic bark collar is used to train Illuminati and other monarch slaves in silence and obedience. On other occasions, fancy gem-studded collars and leather collars are fitted around the necks of female slaves for sex with wolves and fierce dogs, who bite these neck collars when they mount. Many of the slaves have experienced these various collars for obedience, silence, and bestiality. In trying to track down who makes the larger electroshock machines, especially the computer-guided ones, we only got started investigating. CAN 3157978375 makes medical electrodes for portable monitoring units. Sentry Medical Products, at 17171 Murphy, Irvine, California 927147142500233, makes skin-mounted conductive medical electrodes for tense unit machines. In Vivometric, in Healdsburg, CA also makes silver chloride electrodes for placement on human skin. Electrocap Inter produces beg placement systems. Unipatch Medical Products, 1313 Grant Boulevard W, Wabasha, MN makes all types of electrodes and some of theirs go onto machines for shocking people. Classic Medical Products, 580 to TW 19246 Apollo Dr. Muskego, Y make electrodes for diagnostic and shock purposes. Art Automation and Associates Incorporated 17770 Liberty Lane, New Berlin, Y, make electrodes for egg and egg machines. And a Colorado company named Biomedical at Evergreen, company makes medical electrodes. When a slave is taken to an impromptu programming site, a hypnotic drug is injected into them for a quick induction while a metal band is put around their head and a current of 100,000 volts will be run through for say 5 seconds into their heads. This will cause the body to shake, the eyes to close, sweat to pour out of the body, etc. The hands are tied down with restraints. Sometimes the mouth is gagged so that the tongue doesn't protrude. After embedding the hypnotic commands deep into the mind, the programmers might adjust the automatic timer on the equipment and give the victim another blast of voltage for 10 seconds. The person's body will shake and quiver for a while after this. They may dribble, spit, Finally, the person will be brought out of their hypnotic trance, instructed not to remember anything, to feel happy and sent on their way. This entire programming session can last 15 minutes. Programming sites like this can be the back of a van, a back room in a restaurant, or any other place that the equipment can be set up at. This is why a slave, who has been used recently, may hobble a little, or when they get memories feel a tight headband around their head along with awful headaches and flashes of light. The memory will feel like a robotic state to the slave. Here is a drawing that one slave made of the electric headband used to program an altar. The slave handler will also carry a black or gray spiral book with all their own slaves' access codes, triggers, cryptic keys and programs. All this will fit into a briefcase. A working knowledge of hypnosis is helpful to understand how to deal with the slave in certain instances. Because the slave is under the most powerful combinations of mind control and is so divided against his or her own self, it is almost impossible to have many problems with the slave if the handler does what he is supposed to do. However, some handlers get drunk or loan the slave to inexperienced people, etc., and problems do develop. Of course, the slaves always end up taking the blame for everything that goes wrong. If the slave gets out of hand, because the handler doesn't know what he is doing, a stun gun comes in handy to control the mismanaged slave. In other words, a briefcase with the programming book and stun gun are basically all that is needed to control a monarch slave for the rest of his or her life. Some of these stun guns are only a few inches long and look like boxes. Other stun guns are embedded in staffs. The canes and the staffs that Satanists carry around, like Michael Aquino, in public in fact, are actually stun guns to control their slaves. The Queen Mother's staff of the Illuminati has an electric stun gun hidden in it. Children in daycare centers are reporting small boxes with wires that electroshock them during programming. An example is given in Volume 1, of how the Illuminati bloodlines connect to research about electric shocks to control people. For example, David V. Reynolds Research, who wrote, Neuroelectric Research, Electroneuroprosthesis, Electroanesthesia, and Non-Convulsive Electrotherapy. Another way of using electricity for torture is to use directed energy, a new technology, on men's genitals. With skillful use of directed energy they can simulate a rape of a man or woman. Artificial sodomy via directed energy was first tested in male prisons. Elf waves will place thoughts into the men's mind as the directed energy make them feel sodomized. Microwaves for programming. The X-rays below were used with the victim's permission. Mind control implant in the nasal cavity. Electrodes implanted in the person's skull when a child in the 1940s. Transmitting implant in the cortex. Implants enlarged from 7 mm and 11 mm. Drawings by Fritz Springmeier. On August 22, 1989, Philip L. Stocklin, P.O. Box 2111, Satellite Beach, FL took out a patent, which is patent number 4,858,612, which is a device that can be placed in the auditory cortex of the brain. This device allows the following process: someone speaks into a microphone, the microphone then has its sounds coded into microwave, which are sent to the receiver in the brain, and the receiver device will transform the microwaves back so that the person's mind hears the original sounds. In other words, a person with this device in their head will hear whatever the programmers send via microwave signals. Various types of non-lethal weapons have been created and are now being used. Directed energy can be used to sculpt clouds. Elf waves can be used to place thoughts in people's minds without using implants. In 1991, a paper trail began to appear when the CIA connected U.S. Government Global Strategy Council came out with a paper entitled, Non-Lethality, Development of a national policy and employing non-lethal means in a new strategic era. Their paper was prepared by Janet Morris. The Yusuf School of Aerospace Medicine, Brooks Air Force Base, TX put out a report USAF TR 8730 entitled, Behavioral Response of Rats Exposed to High-Power Microwave Radiation. High-power ultra-short pulse-width emitters of microwaves were used to alter the thinking in rats. The report refers to two other reports, one by T. Wheeler, et al., Retrograde Amnesia in Rats Produced by Electron Beam Exposure, entitled USAF TR 833, February 83. The other report is by R. Beaumont, Classical Conditioning of Microwave-Induced Hypothermia in Rats. Radio Sci. 14, 6s, 201-207, 1979. This is a clear paper trail, that military research has gone on to control the brain via microwaves. Another institution in Texas, the Texas Department of Criminal Justice TDCJID, has been putting high-tech listening implants into the ear canal behind the eardrum which lets them monitor what the ear is hearing, a great way to spy. This is according to an implant victim who with medical help discovered his implant. The Walter Reed Army Institute of Research, RARE, discovered that pulsed microwave audiograms, also called analogs of the sounds of spoken words, could be transmitted to a target, and the effect on victim would be to hear voices in their head. The next 11 pages are patent No. 4,858,612. After this, we'll reveal the numerous mind control capabilities of ELF microwave tech. The next pages, from page 169 to 174, may present the reader with some minor difficulties in reading, because with some words it was not possible to process them, because of poor printing. So some words are lost, and this can make certain sentences appear strange. Hearing device US Patent 6-3. Background of the invention. 1. Field at the invention. This invention relates to devices for aiding at hearing in mammals. The invention is based upon the perception of sounds which is experienced in the brain when the brain is subjected to certain microwave radiation signals. 2. Description of the prior art. In prior art hearing devices for human beings, it is well known to amplify sounds to be heard and to apply the amplified sound signal to the ear at the person wearing the hearing aid. Hearing devices of this type are however limited to hearing dysfunctions where there is no damage to the auditory nerve or to the auditory cortex. In the prior art, if there is damage to the auditory cortex or the auditory nerve, it cannot be corrected by the use of a hearing aid. During World War II, individuals in the radiation path of certain radar installations observed clicks and buzzing sounds in response to the microwave radiation. It was through this early observation that it became known to the art that microwaves could cause a direct perception of sound within a human brain. These buzzing or clicking sounds, however, were not meaningful and were not perception of sounds which could otherwise be heard by the receiver. This type of microwave radiation was not representative of any intelligible sound to be perceived. In such radar installations, there was never a sound which was generated which resulted in subsequent generation of microwave signals representative of that sound. Since the early perception of buzzing and clicking, further research has been conducted into the microwave reaction of the brain. In an article entitled Possible Microwave Mechanisms of the Mammalian Nervous System, by Philip L. Stocklin and Brain F. Stocklin, published in the T Journal of Life Sciences. Tower International Technomedical Institute. Incorporated P.O. Box 4594, Philadelphia. PA. 1979. There is disclosed a hypothesis that the mammalian brain generates and uses electromagnetic waves in the lower microwave frequency region as an integral part of the functioning of the central and peripheral nervous systems. This analysis is based primarily upon the potential energy of a protein integral in the neural membrane. In an article by W. Bies entitled, Low-Power Radio Frequency and Microwave Effects on Human Electroencephalogram and Behavior, Physiol. Chemistry Phys. 10. 387, 1978. It is reported that there are significant effects upon the alert human ego during radiation by low-intensity CW microwave electromagnetic energy. Bies observed significant repeatable ego effects are a subject during radiation at specific microwave frequencies. Summary of the invention. Results at theoretical analysis of the physics of brain tissue and the brain/skull cavity, combined with experimentally determined electromagnetic properties at mammalian brain tissue, indicate the physical necessity for the existence of electromagnetic standing waves called modes in the living mammalian brain. The mode characteristics may be determined by two geometric properties at the brain. These are the cephalic index at the brain, its shape in prolate spheroidal coordinates, and the semi-focal distance of the brain, a measure of its size. It was concluded that estimation of brain cephalic index and semi-focal distance using external skull measurements on subjects permits estimation of the subject's characteristic mode frequencies, which in turn will permit a mode-by-mode treatment of the data to simulate hearing. This invention provides for sound perception by individuals who have impaired hearing resulting from ear damage, auditory nerve damage, and damage to the auditory cortex. This invention provides for simulation of microwave radiation which is normally produced by the auditory cortex. The simulated brain waves are introduced into the region of the auditory cortex and provide for perceived sounds on the part of the subject. Brief description of the drawings. Figure 16 Fig 1. GIF shows the acoustic filter bank and mode control matrix portions of the hearing device of this invention. Figure 26 Fig 2. GIF shows the microwave generation and antenna portion of the hearing device of this invention. Figure 36 Fig 345. GIF shows a typical voltage divider network which may be used to provide mode partition. Figure 4 shows another voltage divider device which may be used to provide mode partition. Figure 5 shows a voltage divider to be used as a mode partition wherein each of the resistors is variable in order to provide adjustment of the voltage outputs. Figure 66 Fig 6 to 7. GIF shows a modified hearing device which includes adjustable mode partitioning, and which is used to provide initial calibration of the hearing device. Figure 76 Fig 6 to 7. GIF shows a group of variable oscillators and variable gain controls which are used to determine hearing characteristics of a particular subject. Figure 86 Fig 8 9 10. GIF shows a top view of a human skull showing the lateral dimension. Figure 96 Fig 8 9 10. GIF shows the relationship of the prolate spherical coordinate system to the Cartesian system. Figure 10-6 Fig 8 9 10. GIF shows a side view of a skull showing the medial plane of the head. Section AA. Figure 11-6 Fig 11-12. GIF shows a plot of the transverse electric field amplitude versus primary mode number M. Figure 12-6 Fig 11-12. GIF shows a left side view of the brain and auditory cortex. Figure 13-6 Fig 13. GIF shows the total modal field versus angle for source location. Detailed description of the preferred embodiment. This invention is based upon observations at the physical mechanism a mammalian brain uses to perceive acoustic vibrations. This observation is based in part upon neuroanatomical and other experimental evidence which relates to microwave brain stimulation and the perception of sounds. It has been observed that monochromatic acoustic stimuli, acoustic tones, or single tones, of different frequencies uniquely stimulate different regions at the cochlea. It has also been observed that there is a corresponding one-to-one relationship between the frequency of monochromatic acoustic stimulus and the region of the auditory cortex neurally stimulated by the cochlear nerve under the physiologically normal conditions tonotopicity. It has been observed that for an acoustic tone of a frequency which is at the lower end at the entire acoustical range perceivable by a person, that thin lateral region, line, parallel to the medial axis of the brain and toward the inferior portion of the primary auditory cortex is stimulated. For an acoustic tone whose frequency is toward the high end of the entire perceivable acoustic range, a thin lateral region parallel to the medial axis and toward the superior portion of the primary auditory cortex is stimulated. Neural stimulation results in the generation at a broad band of microwave photons by the change in rotational energy state of protons integral to the neuron membrane of the auditory cortex. The physical size and shape of the brain/skull cavity, together with the semiconductor properties, conductivity and dielectric constant of the brain tissue provide an electromagnetic resonant cavity. Specific single frequencies are constructively reinforced so that a number of standing electromagnetic waves, each at its own single electromagnetic frequency in the microwave frequency region, are generated in the brain. Each such standing electromagnetic wave is called a characteristic mode of the brain/skull cavity. Analysis in terms of prolate spheroidal wave functions indicates that transverse electric field components of these modes have maxima in the region of the auditory cortex. This analysis further shows that transverse electric field possess a variation of amplitude with angle in the angular plane, along the vertical dimension of the auditory cortex, and that is dependent only upon the primary mode number. The auditory cortex in the normally functioning mammalian brain is a source of microwave modes. The auditory cortex generates these modes in accordance with the neural stimulation of the auditory cortex by the cochlear nerve. Mode weighting for any one acoustic tone stimulus is given by the amplitude of each mode along the line region of the auditory cortex which is neurally stimulated by that acoustic tone stimulus. A listing of mode weighting versus frequency of acoustic stimulus is called the mode matrix. In this invention, the functions of the ear, the cochlear nerve, and the auditory cortex are simulated. Microwaves simulating the mode matrix are inserted directly into the region of the auditory cortex. By this insertion of simulated microwave modes, the normal operation of the entire natural hearing mechanism is simulated. Referring now to Figure 1 and Figure 2, there is shown an apparatus which provides for induced perception of sound into a mammalian brain. This bearing device includes a microphone 10 which receives sounds, an acoustic filter bank 12 which separates the signals from the microphone into component frequencies, and a mode control matrix 14 which generates the mode signals which are used to control the intensity of microwave radiations which are injected into the skull cavity in the region of the auditory cortex. The acoustic filter bank 12 consists of a bank of acoustic filters FL through FK which span the audible acoustic spectrum. These filters may be built from standard resistance, inductance, and capacitance components in accordance with well-established practice. In the preferred embodiment there are 24 filters which 63 correspond to the observed critical bandwidths of the human ear. In this preferred embodiment a typical, listed filter parameters is given by table I below. The rectifier outputs 1 through K are feed to K mode partition devices. The mode partitioning devices each have n outputs wherein n is the number of microwave oscillators used to generate the microwave radiation. The outputs 1 through n of each mode partition device is applied respectively to the inputs of each gain-controlled amplifier of the microwave radiation generator. The function of the mode control matrix 14 is the control of the microwave amplifiers in the microwave amplifier bank 18. In the preferred embodiment thus will be 20 for outputs and 24 microwave frequency oscillators. Connected to each microwave amplifier gain control line is a mode simulation device 16 which receives weighted mode signals from the mode partition devices 14. Each mode simulation device consists of 1 through K lines and diodes 17 which are each connected to summing junction 19. The diodes 17 provide for isolation from one mode partition device to the next. The diodes 17 prevent signals from one mode partition device from returning to the other mode partition devices which are also connected to the same summing junction of the mode summation device 16. The diodes also serve a second function which is the rectification of the signals received from the acoustic filter bank by way of the mode partition devices. In this way each mode partition device output is rectified to produce a varying DC voltage with major frequency components of the order of 15 milliseconds or less. The voltage at the summation junction 19 is thus a slowly varying DC voltage. The example mode partition devices are shown in greater detail in Figure 3, Figure 4, and Figure 5. The mode partition devices are merely resistance networks which produce 1 through N output voltages which are predetermined divisions of the input original from the acoustic filter associated with the mode partition device. Figure 3 shows a mode partitioning device wherein several outputs are associated with each series resistor 30. In the embodiment depicted in Figure 4 there is an output associated with each series resistor only, and thus there are n series resistors, or the same number of series resistors as there are outputs. The values of the resistors in the mode partition resistor network are determined in accordance with the magnitudes of the frequency component from the acoustic filter bank 12 which is required at the summation point 19 or the gain control line for amplifiers 20. The microwave amplifier bank 18 consists of plurality of microwave oscillators 1 through N each of which is connected to an amplifier 20. Since the amplifiers 20 are gain controlled by the signals at summation junction 19, the magnitude of the microwave output is controlled by the mode control matrix outputs FL through F. In the preferred embodiment there are 24 amplifiers. The leads from the microwave oscillators I through N to the amplifiers 20 are shielded to prevent crosstalk from one oscillator to the next, and to prevent stray signals from reaching the user of the hearing device. The output impedance of amplifiers 20 should be 1000 ohms and this is indicated by resistor 21. The outputs of amplifiers 20 are all connected to a summing junction 22. The summing junction 22 is connected to a summing impedance 23 which is approximately 50 ohms. The relatively high amplifier output impedance 21 as compared to the relatively low summing impedance 23 provides minimization of crosstalk between the amplifiers. Since the amplitude of the microwave signal needed at the antenna 24 is relatively small, there is no need to match the antenna and summing junction impedances to the amplifier 20 output impedances. Efficiency of the amplifiers 20 is not critical. Level control of the signal at antenna 24 is controlled by pickoff 25 which is connected to the summing impedance 23. In this manner the signal at antenna 24 can be varied from ground to a value which is acceptable to the individual. The antenna 24 is placed next to the subject's head and in the region of the subject's auditory cortex 26. By placement of the antenna 24 in the region of the auditory cortex 26, the microwave field which is generated simulates the microwave field which would be generated if the acoustic sounds were perceived with normal hearing and the auditory cortex was functioning normally. In Figure 2a there is shown a second embodiment of the microwave radiation and generator portion of the hearing device. In this embodiment a broadband microwave source 50 generates microwave signals which are fed to filters 52 through 58 which select from the broadband radiation particular frequencies to be transmitted to the person. As in Figure 2 the amplifiers 20 receive signals on lines 19 from the mode control matrix. The signals on lines 19 provide the gain control for amplifiers 20. In Figure 6 there is shown a modified microwave hearing generator 60 which includes a mode partition resistor divider network as depicted in Figure 5. Each of the mode partition voltage divider networks in this embodiment are individually adjustable for all the resistances in the resistance network. Figure 5 depicts a voltage division system wherein adjustment of the voltage partition resistors is provided for. In Figure 6, the sound source 6T2 generates audible sounds which are received by the microphone of the microwave hearing generator 6T. In accordance with the operation described with respect to Figs 1 and 2. Microwave signals are generated at the antenna 10 in accordance with the redistribution provided by the mode control matrix as set forth in Figure 5. The sound source 62 also produces a signal on line 6 to 4 which is received by a headphone 66. The apparatus depicted in Fig 6 is used to calibrate or fit a microwave hearing generator to a particular individual. Once the hearing generator is adjusted to the particular individual by adjustment of the variable resistors in the adjustable mode partition portion of the hearing generator. A second generator may be built using fixed value resistors in accordance with the adjusted values achieved in fitting the device to the particular subject. The sound produced by headphone 66 should be the same as a sound from the sound source 62 which is received by the microphone 10 in the microwave hearing generator 60. In this way, the subject can make comparisons between the perceived sound from the hearing generator 60 and the sound which is heard from headphone 66. Sound source 62 also produces a signal on 68 which is feed in Q light 69. QR light 69 comes on whenever a sound is emitted from sound source 62 to the microwave generator 60. A piece of text omitted here illegible in Figure 7. There is shown a modified microwave generator which may be used to determine a subject's microwave mode frequencies. In this device the acoustic filter bank and the mode control matrix have been removed and replaced by voltage level signals generated by potentiometers 70. Also included are a plurality of variable frequency oscillators 70 to which feed microwave amplifiers 74 which are gain controlled from the signal generated by potentiometers 70 and pick-off arm 76. This modified microwave hearing generator is used to provide signals using one oscillator at a time. When an oscillator is turned on, the frequency is varied about the estimated value until a maximum acoustic perception by the subject is perceived. This perception however may consist of a buzzing or hissing sound tat rather than a tone because only one microwave frequency is being received. The first test of perception is to determine the subject's lowest modal frequency for audibility. M equals 1. Once this modal frequency is obtained, the process is repeated for several higher modal frequencies and continued until no maximum acoustic perception occurs. Another method of determination of a subject's modal frequencies is through anatomical estimation. This procedure is by measurement of the subject's cephalic index and the lateral dimensions of the skull. In this method, the shape is determined in prolate spheroidal coordinates. Purely anatomical estimation of subject's modal frequencies is performed by first measuring the maximum lateral dimension, breadth, L figure 1, of the subject's head together with the maximum dimension D, anterior to posterior, in the medial plane of the subject's head. D is the distance along Z-axis as shown in Figure 10. The ratio L/D, called in anthropology the cephalic index, is monotonically related to the boundary value E0 defining the ellipsoidal surface approximating the interface between the brain and the skull in the prolate spheroidal coordinate system. E0 defines the shape of this interface. E0 and D together give an estimate of A, the semifocal distance of the defining ellipsoid. Using E0 and A, together with known values of the conductivity and the electric constants of brain tissue, those wavelengths are found for which the radial component of the electric field satisfies the boundary condition that it is 0 at E0. These wavelengths are the wavelengths associated with the standing waves or modes. The corresponding frequencies are found by dividing the phase velocity of microwaves in brain tissue by each of the wavelengths. A subject's microwave modal frequencies may also be determined by observing the effect of external microwave radiation upon the EEG. The frequency of the M=I mode may then be used as a base point to estimate all other modal frequencies. A typical example of such an estimation is where the subject is laterally irradiated with a monochromatic microwave field simultaneous with EEG measurement and the microwave frequency altered until a significant change occurs in the EEG, the lowest such frequency causing a significant EEG change is found. This is identified as the frequency of the M=1 mode, the lowest mode of importance in auditory perception. The purely anatomical estimation procedure, Figs. 8, 9, 10, is then performed and the ratio of each modal frequency to the M1 modal frequency obtained. These ratios together with the experimentally determined M-I frequency are then used to estimate the frequencies of the mode numbers higher than 1. The prolate spheroidal coordinate system is shown in Figure 9. Along the lateral plane containing the x and y coordinates of Figure 9, the prolate spheroidal coordinate variable for angle lies Figs. 9 and 10. Plots of the transverse electric field amplitude versus primary mode number M are shown in Figure 11. The equation is the elevation view, Figure 12, of the brain from the left side, shows the primary auditory cortex 10. The isotone lines and the high-frequency region are toward the top of 100 and the low-frequency region toward the bottom of 100. The formula I6-6.gif set forth below is the formula for combining modes from an isotone line and equals J being excited to obtain the total modal field at some other angular location. For this formula, if we let J equals 1, just one isotone single-frequency acoustic stimulus line, then it can be shown that all modes, in general, must be used for any one tone. Figure 13 shows the resulting total modal field versus angle for source location at 5.25 degree, 12.5 degree, etc. with reference to the set of curves at the left top of this figure. A spacing of approximately 7.25 degree and corresponds to a tonal difference of about I octave. This conclusion is based on the side lobes of pattern coming from equals 5.25 degree, etc. The total filed value on y-axis falls considerably below the top curves for source locations well below 5.25 degree toward the high acoustic stimulus end, and also as the source of frequency goes well above 10 degree frequency end, is plotted positive downward from the at lateral location as indicates in Figure 11. Resistor weightings are obtained from the unreadable word M.J. Formula I. The scale between acoustic frequency and must be set or estimated from experiment. Approximately 5.25 plus -1 degree corresponds to a tonal stimulus at about 2 kHz. The most sensitive region of the ear, since this source location gives the highest electric field amplitude. The apparatus of Figure 7 may also be used to determine values for a hearing device which are required for a particular subject. Once the modal frequencies have been estimated, the device of Figure 7, which includes variable microwave oscillators, may be used to determine values for the oscillators which match the subject, and to determine resistance values associated with the mode partition devices of the mode control matrix. In Figure 7, manual control of the amplifier gain is achieved by potentiometers 76. In this manner the amplifier gains are varied about the estimated settings raw and acoustic tone stimulus in the region of 2000 Hz, 2 kHz, until maximum acoustic perception and a purest tone are achieved together. The term purest tone may also be described as the most pleasing acoustic perception by the subject. This process may be repeated at selected frequencies above and below 2 kHz. The selected frequencies correspond to regions of other acoustic filter center frequencies of the subject. When modal frequency, oscillator frequency, and gain set values, setting a potentiometer 76, are noted. It is then possible to calculate fixed oscillator frequencies and control resistor values for the adjusted hearing device for this particular subject. In the event the subject has no prior acoustic experience, that is deaf from birth, estimated resistor values must be used. Also, a complex acoustic stimulation test including language articulation and pairs of harmonically related tones may be developed to maximize the match of the hearing device parameters for those of this particular subject. Typical components for use in this invention include commercially available high-fidelity microphones which have a range of 50 Hz to 5 kHz with plus or minus 3 dB variation. The audio filters to be used with the acoustic filter bank 12 are constructed in a conventional manner, and have Q values of about 6. The filters may also be designed with 3 dB down points, the bandwidth away from the center frequency, occurring at adjacent center frequency locations. The diodes 17 in the mode control matrix which provide isolation between the mode partition circuits are commercially available diodes in the audio range. The microwave oscillators I through N and the microwave amplifiers 20 are constructed with available microwave transistors which can be configured either as oscillators or amplifiers. Examples of the transistors are GaAsFET field effect transistors by Hewlett-Packard known as the FET series or silicone bipolar transistors by Hewlett-Packard known as the HXT series. All the cable between the oscillators, the microwave amplifiers, and the antenna should be constructed with either single or double shielded coaxial cable. The antenna 24 for directing microwave signals to the audio cortex 26 should be approximately the size of the auditory cortex. A typical size would be 1 1/2 cm high and 1/2 to 1 cm wide. The antenna as shown is located over the left auditory cortex. But the right may also be used. Since the characteristic impedance of the brain tissue at these microwave frequencies is close to 50 ohms. Efficient transmission by commercially available standard 30 ohm coax is possible. The invention has been described in reference to the preferred embodiments. It is, however, to be understood that other advantages, features, and embodiments may be within the scope of this invention as defined in the appended claims. What is claimed is 1. A sound perception device for providing induced perception of sound into a mammalian brain comprising in combination, means for generating microwave radiation which is representative of a sound to be perceived, said means for generating including means for generating a simultaneous plurality of microwave radiation frequencies and means for adjusting the amplitude of said microwave radiation frequencies in accordance with the sound to be perceived, and antenna means located in the region of the auditory cortex of said mammalian brain for transmitting said microwave energy into the auditory cortex region of said brain. 2. A hearing device for perception of sounds comprising in combination, means for generating a signal representative of sounds, means for analyzing said signal representative of said sounds having an output means for generating a plurality of microwave signals having different frequencies having an input connected to said output of said means for analyzing said signals, having an output, means for applying said plurality of microwave signals to the head of a subject, and whereby the subject perceives sounds which are representative of said sounds. 3. The apparatus in accordance with claim to wherein said means for generating a signal is a microphone for detecting sound waves. 4. The apparatus in accordance with claim to wherein said means for applying said plurality of microwave signals is an antenna. 5. The apparatus in accordance with claim for wherein said antenna is placed in the region of the auditory cortex of the subject. 6. The apparatus in accordance with claim to wherein the subject is a human being. 7. The apparatus in accordance with claim to wherein said means for analyzing said signal comprises an acoustic filter bank for dividing said sounds into a plurality of component frequencies, and a mode control matrix means for providing control signals which are weighted in accordance with said plurality of component frequencies, having an output connected to said means for generating a plurality of microwave signal inputs. 8. The apparatus in accordance with Claim 7 wherein said acoustic filter bank includes a plurality of audio frequency filters. 9. The apparatus in accordance with Claim 8 wherein said audio frequency filters provide a plurality of output frequencies having amplitudes which are a function of said signal representative of sounds. 10. The apparatus in accordance with Claim 9 wherein said amplitudes are the weighted in accordance with transform function of the signal representative of sounds. 11. The apparatus in accordance with Claim 7 wherein said mode control matrix device includes a voltage divider connected to each of said plurality of said audio frequency filters. 12. The apparatus in accordance with Claim 8 wherein each of said voltage dividers has a plurality of outputs which are connected in circuit to said means for generating a plurality of microwave signals. 13. The apparatus in accordance with Claim 2 wherein said means for generating a plurality of mirrorwave signals comprises a plurality of microwave generators each having a different frequency and means for controlling the output amplitude of each of said generators. 14. The apparatus in accordance with Claims 2 wherein said means for generating plurality of microwave signals comprises a broadband microwave source and a plurality of filters. 15. The apparatus in accordance with Claim 13 wherein said generators each comprise a microwave signal source and a gain-controlled microwave amplifier. 16. The apparatus in accordance with Claim 13 wherein said means for analyzing output is connected to said means for controlling microwave amplifier output amplitudes. 17. The apparatus in accordance with Claim 13 wherein analyzing includes K-audio frequency filters. 18. The apparatus in accordance with Claim 17 wherein there are N microwave generator. 19. The apparatus in accordance with Claim 18 including a mode partitioning means which provides N outputs for each of said K-audio frequency filters. 20. The apparatus in accordance with Claim 19 wherein said N amplifiers each have K inputs from said mode partitioning means. 21. The apparatus in accordance with Claim 20 wherein said N amplifiers have K inputs less the mode partitioning means outputs which are so small that they may be omitted. 22. The apparatus in accordance with Claim 20 wherein said mode partitioning output device outputs each include a diode connected to each microwave amplifier gain control to provide isolation between all outputs. 23. The apparatus in accordance with Claim 20 wherein said K-audio frequency filters are chosen to correspond to the critical bandwidths of the human ear. 24. The apparatus in accordance with Claim 20 wherein said N microwave generators are each adjustable in frequency output. 25. The apparatus in accordance with Claim 18 wherein the frequency of each N microwave generators is determined by anatomical estimation. 26. The apparatus in accordance with Claim 18 wherein the frequency of the lowest frequency microwave generator is chosen by determination of the effect of external microwave generation on the ego of the subject. 27. The apparatus in accordance with Claim 18 wherein the frequency of each of said N microwave generators corresponds to the subject's microwave modal frequencies. 28. The apparatus in accordance with Claim 27 wherein the subject's modal frequencies are determined by measurement of the subject's cephalic index and the lateral dimensions of the skull. 29. The apparatus in accordance with Claim 28 wherein the subject's lowest modal frequency is determined by varying the frequency of the lowest frequency microwave generator about the estimated value until a maximum acoustic perception is obtained by the subject. In 1989, James C. Lin wrote electromagnetic interaction with biological systems, which deals with transmitting ideas and words via electromagnetic waves. Briefcases, stereo speakers and boxes are some of the disguises that the CIA has been caught using to hide their ELF microwave emitters that plant thoughts in people. One victim who spent time talking to Fritz Springmeier reported how they had repeatedly tried to trick him into going to free hotel rooms and other traps, where they tried to bombard his head with the idea that he should sell drugs. He cleverly dismantled their devices, which they hid in the ceilings and other locations in these rooms to protect himself from the thoughts they were trying repeatedly to beam into his head. He was on the run as a fugitive to protect his mind. Naval intelligence and other groups have conducted research into ELF waves upon the human body and mind. Some of the many things that can be done to the human body and mind with ELF waves include: A. Put a person to sleep. B. Make a person tired or depressed. C. Create a feeling of fear in a person. D. Create a zombie state. E. Create a violent state. F. Create a state of being sexually aggressive. G. Change cellular chemistry. H. Change hormone levels. I. Inhibit or enhance mRNA synthesis processes. J. Control the DNA transaction process. K. Control biological spin and proton coupling constants in DNA, RNA and RNA transferases. Unfortunately for us humans, ELF waves can penetrate almost anything. The U.S. military has built a ground wave emergency network, GWEN, all over the U.S. with several hundred 300 500 GWEN towers that broadcast a very low frequency wave, VLF, for mind control of the American public. A single GWEN tower can broadcast up to 300 miles in a 3,600 circle. Plus 8 secret powerful ELF transmitters have been established, and 3 of them operate on the West Coast. Prozac and slaves and microwave towers. Some of the monarch slaves are receiving Prozac. Prozac, fluoxetine hydrochloride a serotonin reuptake inhibitor, is dangerous for everyone. Prozac is now the second most used drug in the world. 3 examples of the ongoing nightmare now happening worldwide. September 14, 1989, Joseph Wesbecker on Prozac went crazy and got a gun and opened fire in the Standard Gravure building in Louisville, killing 8 and wounding 12 others before killing himself. 20 suits against Eli Lilly were filed by victim in this case. July 1990, Rhonda Haller of Shirley, New York filed a $150 million suit against Eli Lilly, charging that Prozac had driven her repeatedly to attempt suicide. August 1990, CCHR called on Congress to ban Prozac, and 3 widows in Louisville, KT filed $50 million lawsuits each, charging that a man on Prozac had been driven insane to kill by the Prozac and had killed their husbands. 2 other lawsuits were filed in this time period, one from Indianapolis, and one from Chicago, from people driven to attempt suicide by Prozac. Certain brain activities trigger people on Prozac to become homicidal or suicidal. Thanks to research by Illuminati-controlled companies, the network knows exactly how to use ELF waves vectored on a particular person by 3 separate towers to stimulate the Prozac-controlled brain to murder. This is being used to increase acts of anarchy and violence in order to help ensure anti-gun legislation. If a slave doesn't comply or needs to be thrown from the freedom train, they can become a usable statistic. Simply trigger them to murder and then watch the police gun them down. The no gains one more statistic and another case to scare the public into accepting gun control. The use of waves and electricity to implant thoughts. The programmers are always trying to outdo what they've done before. They are not satisfied with the old recipes for scrambled brains. They keep inventing and refining new methods. Anything and everything within their grasp has been tried. They have found that ELF and VLF electromagnetic waves can be used to control people's thoughts. Harmonics and sound waves are used to manipulate the RNA covering of neuron pathways to the subconscious. Harmonic generators, code-named ether wave, are able to embed detailed commands which are linked to audible triggers. This is one of the standard features of the Monarch program. It allows the slaves to be controlled by trigger words which make no sense or seem to carry no negative connotation to outside listeners. For instance, the words, "Mr. Postman wait and see," a marionette command, might set off an access sequence so that a slave living away from its master goes to its master, also called a handler. The use of harmonics has taken away much of the work of the big programmers. Now harmonic machines can implant the programming and codes that the programmers put in. It's quicker and perhaps more efficient, although the lesser cult groups have to get by with the older methods. And the Illuminati still have many excellent programmers in full-time and part-time use. According to an eyewitness, their top programmers are far beyond their 1,950 to 60 predecessors like Mengele. There are 4 types of brainwaves: alpha, beta, delta, and theta. The 4 basic models of Monarch slaves have the same names as these 4 types of brain waves. High-level Illuminati models may have programming that includes all of these types. According to one ex-government source, the CIA has been labeling their harmonic-created total mind-controlled slaves by the following: Bravo 2 series models are men programmed to run the beast computers. Delta series are models for espionage and assassination. Juliet series are sexual mind-controlled slaves. Kilo 5 series is military espionage. Michael 1 series slaves are CIA agents under total mind control. Operation Green Star was the mind control project to create UFO abduction scenarios. Much of the high-level programming in the 1980s and 1990s